My own pack sold me for $3,000 at an auction because 3 healers labeled me barren and worthless. They called me defective merchandise and handed me to the highest bidder to pay a debt I didn't owe. They didn't know the alpha who bought me had already scented the truth. I was never barren. I was his fated mate, and in 3 days he would make me pregnant and make them regret it. Chapter 1. The Auction Block. The auction house smelled like wet dog in desperation. Luella stood on the platform in the back room of Griswold's bar, her wrists bound with silver-laced rope that burned against her skin. The rope wasn't necessary. She was an Omega, the weakest rank in the werewolf hierarchy, and she'd never shifted successfully in her life. But Brock Cherry, her pack's beta, and the man orchestrating this humiliation, enjoyed the theater of it all. Lot 47, Brock announced, his voice carrying through the dimly lit space where a dozen alphas from neighboring packs sat nursing whiskey and evaluating merchandise. Female, 23 years old, clear water pack bloodline, Omega rank, obedient, healthy, housed. Like she was a golden retriever, Luella kept her eyes on the floor, her dark hair falling forward to hide the shame burning in her cheeks. The concrete was stained with things she didn't want to identify. Somewhere in the corner, another Omega whimpered a male, barely 18, being sold because his family couldn't afford to feed him. This was what happened to werewolves who couldn't contribute to those who couldn't hunt, couldn't fight, couldn't breed, especially couldn't breed. Now, I'll be transparent. Brock continued, circling Luella like a rancher showing off a lame horse. This one's Barren, tested by 3 separate healers. Not a viable mate for breeding purposes. But she's got other uses: domestic work, pack maintenance, that sort of thing. She can cook, clean, and she doesn't talk back. That last part was a lie. Luella talked back plenty, but after Brock had backhanded her across the face during the preparation process, she'd learned to save her words. Start in 2000, Brock said. Silence. The alphas stared at her with the same interest they'd give expired meat. A barren Omega wasn't just worthless, she was bad luck. In werewolf culture, females existed to strengthen pack bloodlines. A woman who couldn't bear children was a genetic dead end, a waste of resources. Luella had known this her entire life. She'd felt it in every pitying glance from mated females, every dismissive grunt from pack males, every healer who'd examined her and pronounced her womb dormant. The curse had started at 16 when she'd failed to experience her first heat. By 18, when other females were being courted by eager males, Luella was being shuffled to the back of pack gatherings, forgotten. By 23, she'd become invisible until Alpha Gideon Martin, her own pack's leader and distant cousin, had lost $30,000 in a poker game with the Shadow Pine Pack's representative. No takers at 2. Brock's voice held a sharp edge now. He needed to sell her. The Clearwater Pack's honor depended on paying their debts, and Luella was the only unmated female expendable enough to liquidate. 1500, someone called out a grizzled alpha from the Riverbend Pack, who ran a cleaning service for wealthy humans. He'd buy her as cheap labor, work her until her hands bled, and toss her out when she aged out of usefulness. 1500 going once, 3000. The voice came from the back of the room, deep and smooth like aged bourbon. Every head turned. The man who stood in the shadows was tall, easily 6'4", with shoulders that filled the doorway and presence that made the air feel heavier. He stepped into the light, and Luella's breath caught. He was beautiful in the way predators are beautiful. All sharp lines and controlled power, dark hair, nearly black, swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. His eyes were amber true alpha gold, and when they locked on Luella, she felt the weight of them in her chest. Alpha Teodora Wagner of Shadow Pine, Brock said, his voice suddenly obsequious. Didn't expect you personally, sir. Thought you'd send a representative. I changed my mind. Teodoro's gaze never left Luella. He moved closer, his footsteps silent despite his size. When he reached the platform, he stood directly in front of her, so close she could smell him pine and earth and something wild. "Look at me," he said quietly. It wasn't a command. It was a request. But Luella found herself obeying anyway, lifting her chin to meet those amber eyes. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Surprise. Recognition. It was gone before she could name it. 3. 0 is generous for a Barren Omega, Brock said, recovering quickly. "She's yours if I'll take her. Don't you want to inspect her? First, check her teeth. Her, I said, I'll take her." Teodoro's voice dropped into a register that made every wolf in the room straighten their spines. "Do we have a problem, Beta Cherry?" "No, sir. No problem." Brock was already fumbling for the contract papers, his hands shaking slightly. Luella watched in numb disbelief as money changed hands. Crisp hundreds counted out on a beer-stained table. $3,100 bills. The price of her entire existence. Teodoro signed the transfer papers with a fountain pen he produced from his jacket. His handwriting was surprisingly elegant. "She's all yours," Brock said, nearly tripping over himself to cut the silver rope from Luella's wrists. The moment it fell away, the burns began to heal. Her weak omega metabolism finally able to cope with the damage. "Get your things," Teodora told her. "I don't have things," Luella said. Her voice came out hoarse from disuse. His expression darkened. "Nothing. They took my clothes to pay for the boarding fees while I waited for auction. This is borrowed." She gestured to the thin cotton dress that hung on her frame like a sack. It wasn't even hers. It belonged to Brock's mate. Donated with the same enthusiasm someone might give away a used tissue. Teodoro's jaw tightened. For a moment, Luella thought he might hit someone, but instead he shrugged off his jacket. Expensive black leather that probably cost more than her entire former life, and draped it around her shoulders. It was warm. It smelled like him. "Let's go," he said. Luella followed because she had no choice. The auction house doors opened to a parking lot where a sleek black SUV waited, engine running. A younger man stood beside it, sandy-haired, broad-shouldered, wearing the confident stance of a high-ranking wolf. "This her?" the man asked. "This is Luella Martin," Teodoro said. "Luella, this is Philip Underwood, my beta." Philip's eyes widened slightly when he got a good look at her, but he covered it quickly with a polite nod. Ma'am. No one had ever called her ma'am. The drive to Shadowpine territory took 90 minutes. Luella sat in the back seat, drowning in Theodoro's jacket, watching the familiar landscapes of clear water fade into the darker, denser forests of Shadowpine. This pack was legendary, wealthy, powerful, exclusive. They didn't accept outsiders easily. They certainly didn't buy Barren Omegas. "Why?" Luella finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Teodoro glanced at her in the rear-view mirror. "Why? What? Why buy me? You could have gotten a fertile Omega for that price, or a beta female who could actually contribute to your pack." She swallowed hard. "I'm useless." "You're not useless." His voice was flat. "Final, and you'll understand soon enough." And well, that wasn't an answer, but it was all she was going to get. The Shadow Pine Pack house appeared through the trees like something out of a fairy tale. A massive lodge built from timber and stone, with warm lights glowing in every window. Gardens surrounded it, manicured and lush even in late autumn. In the distance, smaller cabins dotted the forest, housing for pack families. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. Philip parked near the main entrance, and Teodoro was out of the SUV before the engine fully stopped. He opened Luella's door himself, offering his hand. She stared at it large, calloused, with a thin scar across the knuckles before slowly placing her smaller hand in his. The moment their skin touched, something electric shot up her arm. She gasped. Teodoro's pupils dilated, his nostrils flaring slightly. Inside, he said roughly. Now, the pack house interior was just as impressive. Vaulted ceilings, exposed beams, a grand staircase leading to the upper floors. But Luella barely noticed the architecture because 30 pairs of eyes were suddenly locked on her. Wolves filled the great room. They'd been eating, talking, laughing. Now they were silent, staring at the Barren Omega their alpha had brought home. "Everyone, this is Luella Martin," Teodoro announced. His hand was still on her lower back, warm through the thin dress. "She's under my protection. Anyone who disrespects her answers to me personally." The threat hung in the air like smoke. An older woman stepped forward, gray-haired, elegant, with the bearing of someone used to command. "Alpha, perhaps we should discuss this in private." "There's nothing to discuss, Joni." Teodoro's voice was still. "Philip, show Luella to the East Wing guest room. Make sure she has everything she needs." "Yes, Alpha." As Philip guided her toward the stairs, Luella heard the whispers starting. "Did he really buy her? I heard she's barren. What is he thinking? She's so thin. Look at her." Enough. Teodoro's single word cut through the gossip like a blade. The East Wing guest room was larger than her entire childhood bedroom had been. It had its own bathroom with a clawfoot tub, a massive bed with a hand-stitched quilt, and windows overlooking the forest. Someone had already laid out fresh clothes on the bed: soft leggings, an oversized sweater, thick socks. "Bathrooms through there," Philip said, pointing. "There's soap, shampoo, whatever you need. Kitchen's downstairs if you get hungry." "Alpha wants you comfortable." "Why?" Luella asked again. Philip hesitated, clearly weighing his words. "That's between you and him." But he paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Alpha Teodoro doesn't do anything without a reason. If he bought you, there's a purpose." A purpose, not because she had worth, because she had a use. After Philip left, Luella locked the door and collapsed onto the bed. The jacket, Teodoro's jacket, was still around her shoulders. She buried her face in it, and for the first time since the auction, let herself cry. Silent, shaking sobs that tasted like relief and terror in equal measure. She'd been sold. She'd been bought. And in 3 days, she would discover that everything the healers had told her, everything her pack had believed, everything she'd accepted about her broken body was a lie. Chapter 2. Safe Harbor. Luella woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting sensation of softness beneath her body. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories crashed back the auction house. The silver rope burns. Teodoro Wagner's amber eyes studying her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. She sat up slowly, her body aching in ways that had nothing to do with physical injury. The guest room looked even more beautiful in daylight. All warm wood and cream-colored linens. Someone had left a tray on the bedside table while she slept. Fresh fruit, buttered toast, a pot of tea that was somehow still steaming. The clock on the wall read 10:47 a.m. Luella couldn't remember the last time she'd slept past dawn. In the clear water pack, Omegas rose before everyone else to prepare breakfast, stoke fires, begin the endless domestic labor that justified their existence. She ate mechanically, her stomach protesting the richness of real butter after months of scraps and leftovers. The tea was some kind of herbal blend, chamomile and something floral she couldn't identify. It settled her nerves enough that she could think clearly. $3,000. That's what Teodoro had paid for her. Not a fortune by Alpha standards, but far more than a Barren Omega was worth. The Riverbend Alpha had offered $5,500, and even that had seemed generous. What does he want from me? The question nodded at her as she showered in the massive bathroom using soap that smelled like lavender and shampoo that actually lathered, instead of the harsh lye-based stuff she'd used in clear water. The hot water felt like a luxury she didn't deserve. When she emerged wrapped in a towel that was softer than any blanket she'd ever owned, she found the clothes from last night still laid out on the bed. She dressed quickly. Black leggings, an oversized cream sweater, thick wool socks. Everything fit perfectly, as if someone had known her exact size. A knock on the door made her jump. "Luella?" A woman's voice, older but not unkind. "May I come in?" Luella opened the door to find the elegant gray-haired woman from last night. Up close, she was even more striking. High cheekbones, sharp blue eyes, the kind of beauty that age refined rather than diminished. "I'm Joni Rose," the woman said. "I'm the Pack's head healer and the Alpha's aunt. I wanted to check on you, see how you're settling in." "I'm fine," Luella said automatically. Joni's lips curved into a knowing smile. "You're a terrible liar, child, may I?" She gestured to the room. Luella stepped aside, and Joni entered with the quiet confidence of someone who'd been navigating Pack politics for decades. She settled into the armchair by the window, gesturing for Luella to sit on the bed. "I'm going to be direct with you, sis," Joni said, "because you're clearly intelligent enough to know when you're being patronized. Do you know why my nephew bought you? No, neither do I." Joanne's admission was surprisingly frank. "Teodoro doesn't confide in me the way he did when he was younger, but I know him well enough to understand he doesn't act on impulse. Whatever his reasons, they're deliberate." "I'm Barren," Luella said flatly. 3 healers confirmed it. "I can't give him children. I can't strengthen his bloodline. I can't. Healers can be wrong." The words hung in the air like a suspended note. Luella stared at her. "What?" "I said healers can be wrong." Joni leaned forward, her blue eyes intense. "I've been practicing for 43 years, child. I've seen things that would make younger healers question everything they learned. The body is not a simple machine, especially not a werewolf's body, but the tests." "What tests exactly?" "Let me guess. They checked your hormones, examined your reproductive organs, declared your womb dormant or unresponsive." Luella nodded slowly. "And did any of them consider that you might be a late bloomer? That your wolf might be suppressed rather than absent? That prolonged stress, malnutrition, or abuse could delay your full maturation?" Joanne's voice was sharp now, clinical. "Or did they simply see an Omega who hadn't experienced a heat by 18 and stamp you with a diagnosis that justified your Pack's neglect?" The words hit Luella like physical blows. She couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm not saying you're fertile," Joni said, her tone gentling slightly. "I'm saying the Clearwater healers might have been incompetent, lazy, or deliberately misleading. And before you ask no, I won't examine you. That's between you and Teodoro. But I wanted you to understand that whatever you've been told about your body might not be the whole truth." Before Luella could respond, another knock sounded. This time it was Philip. "Alpha wants to see you," he said his office. Now Teodora's office was on the 2nd floor overlooking the forest. It was exactly what Luella expected from an Alpha's private space. Dark wood furniture, leather chairs, walls lined with books and Pack records. What she didn't expect was the softness. A worn rug that had clearly been walked on for decades, framed photos of Pack members, a coffee mug on the desk with a chip in the rim. Teodoro stood at the window, his back to her. He wore dark jeans and a gray Henley that stretched across his shoulders. And for a moment, Luella was struck by how young he looked. He couldn't be more than 30, maybe 32. "Sit," he said without turning around. Luella sat in the leather chair across from his desk, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. When Teodoro finally turned to face her, his expression was unreadable. He moved to his desk, leaning against it rather than sitting behind it, a deliberate choice to reduce the power differential. "How did you sleep?" he asked. "Fine. Did you eat?" "Yes." "Joni speak with you?" "Yes." His jaw tightened. "You don't have to be monosyllabic with me, Luella. I'm not going to punish you for having thoughts." The kindness in his voice made something crack in her chest. "I don't understand what you want from me," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "You paid $3,000 for a Barren Omega. You're housing me in a guest room instead of servants' quarters. You're having your aunt check on me like I'm a guest instead of property. What is this? What do you want?" Teodoro was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved around the desk and crouched in front of her chair so they were eye level. I'm going to tell you something and I need you to listen carefully, he said. Can you do that? Luella nodded, not trusting her voice. You are not property. You were never property even when your pack treated you that way. You are a person with agency, autonomy, and worth that exist independent of your ability to breed. He paused, letting the words sink in. I bought you because your pack was going to sell you to someone who would abuse you. I bought you because the moment I saw you on that platform I knew. Knew what? His amber eyes held hers. That you're my mate. The world tilted. Luella's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mate. The word echoed in her skull like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. That's impossible, she finally whispered. Mates would know instantly. There would be a bond, a pull. I would have felt. You felt something when we touched in the parking lot. She had that electric shock, that jolt of recognition that had made her gasp. That could have been anything, she protested. Static electricity, nerves. Luella. Her name in his mouth was gentle but firm. I'm 31 years old. I've touched thousands of wolves in my life. I've never felt what I felt when I touched you. And I've been searching for my mate since I was 18, but I'm Barren. You're not. 3 healers were wrong. Teodoro stood, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Or lying. I haven't decided which yet, but I know what I sensed when I bought you, and I know what my wolf is telling me now. You are my mate, Luella, and whatever your former pack told you about your body was either incompetence or cruelty. Luella felt tears burning in her eyes. You can't know that. You can't just decide that I'm not broken because you want it to be true. I'm not deciding anything. He moved back to the window, giving her space. I'm stating what I... No, but I understand that you need proof. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here for 3 days. During that time, you'll eat proper meals. You'll rest. You'll let your body recover from whatever hell your pack put you through. And at the end of 3 days, if you still want to leave, I'll give you money and a car, and you can go anywhere you want. And if I stay, then we figure this out together. He turned back to face her. I won't force a bond on you, Luella. I won't claim you against your will, but I'm asking you to give this. Give us 3 days. That's all. 3 days. It felt like nothing and everything at once. What do I do during these 3 days? Luella asked. Whatever you want. Explore the territory. Meet the pack. Rest. Read. Joni can show you around if you'd like company. He paused. And tonight, you'll have dinner with me, just the 2 of us, so we can actually talk like people instead of whatever this is. Why are you being so kind to me? The question seemed to surprise him. Because you deserve kindness. Because you've clearly been starved of it for too long. And because he hesitated, then continued. Because even if you weren't my mate, I'd still want to help you. No one should be sold like livestock. Luella looked down at her hands. They were shaking again. 3 days, she said quietly. 3 days, Teodoro agreed. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Joni took Luella on a tour of the pack house, the massive kitchen where pack meals were prepared, the library with its floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the common areas where wolves gathered to socialize. Everyone they passed stared at Luella with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. They'll warm up, Joni said. Once they realize you're not a threat. How am I a threat? I'm an Omega. You're an unknown Omega who has the Alpha's attention. Impact dynamics. That makes you very dangerous indeed. Joni's smile was rough, especially to the females who've been hoping to catch Teodoro's eye. They were passing through a hallway lined with portraits when Luella stopped short. One painting showed a younger Teodoro, maybe 18 or 19, standing beside a beautiful woman with dark hair and green eyes. His mother, Joni said quietly. Alpha Ana Huerta. She died when Teodoro was 23. Rogue attack during a border patrol. I'm sorry. So was he. It's why he's so protective of this pack. Why he takes threats seriously. Why Joni trailed off, then sighed. Why he won't tolerate anyone being treated as less than. They continued walking. But Luella's mind was spinning. an alpha who'd lost his mother young, who'd been searching for his mate for over a decade, who'd seen her on an auction platform and known. It was too much like a fairy tale. And Luella had learned long ago that fairy tales didn't happen to broken girls. Dinner was served in a small private dining room off the main kitchen, just Luella and Teodoro, as promised, with Philip standing guard outside the door. The table was set simply two place settings: a roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, bread that was still warm from the oven. Teodoro served her himself, piling her plate with more food than she could possibly eat. "Tell me about yourself," he said once they'd started eating. "Not your pack history or your medical records. You, what do you like? What makes you happy?" No one had ever asked her that before. I like books," Luella said slowly. "Before everything happened, I used to sneak into the pack library at night. I'd read by flashlight under my blanket. What kind of books? Anything, everything, but mostly." She hesitated. "Mostly stories about people who started with nothing and became something more." Teodoro's expression softened. "That makes sense." They talked for over an hour. Not about heavy things. Not about bonds or mates or her barrenness, but about small things. Favorite foods she'd never had: sushi. He promised to take her to a place in the city. Favorite seasons: she loved autumn. He preferred winter. Childhood memories that didn't hurt to recall. And slowly, gradually, Luella felt something unfurling in her chest, something that felt dangerous and fragile, and terrifyingly like hope. When Teodoro walked her back to her room, he stopped at the door. "Thank you for giving this a chance," he said. "I haven't decided anything yet. I know, but you're here. That's enough." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered for just a moment against her skin. That electric sensation again, stronger this time. "Good night, Luella. Good night." She watched him walk away, broad shoulders disappearing down the hallway, and pressed her hand against her chest where her heart was racing. 3 days. In 3 days she would learn if fairy tales could come true, or if she was still just a barren omega pretending to be something more. Chapter 3. Fever dreams. Luella couldn't sleep. She lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying Teodoro's words on an endless loop. "You are my mate." It was impossible. Mates recognized each other instantly. Everyone knew that. The bond was supposed to be overwhelming, undeniable. A pull so strong that newly mated pairs sometimes couldn't stand to be apart for more than a few hours. But all Luella felt was confusion, and that strange electric sensation whenever Teodoro touched her. Was that the bond? Or was it just her body's response to the first kindness she'd experienced in years? Around 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and padded to the window. The shadow pine territory stretched out before her, bathed in moonlight. She could see wolves moving through the forest patrol, probably keeping the border safe. In clear water, she'd never been allowed on patrol. Omega stayed inside where they couldn't embarrass the pack with their weakness. A soft knock made her jump. "Luella, you awake?" Philip's voice quiet and concerned. She opened the door to find the beta holding a mug of something that smelled like warm milk and honey. "Saw your light on," he explained. "Figured you might need this. It's what my mom used to make when I couldn't sleep." The gesture was so unexpectedly kind that Luella felt her throat tighten. "Thank you." Philip handed her the mug, but didn't leave. He shifted his weight, clearly debating something. "What is it?" Luella asked. "I probably shouldn't tell you this," he said. "But Alpha's been pacing his office for the last 3 hours. He does that when he's worried, and I've known him since we were kids, and I've never seen him this worked up over anyone." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you look like someone waiting for the other shoe to drop, like you don't believe this is real." Philip met her eyes. "But it is real. Whatever you're feeling or not feeling right now, Teodoro's feeling it 100 times stronger. That's what it means to be an alpha who's found his mate." "It's consuming, but I'm barren," Luella whispered. Even if we are mates, I can't give him what he needs. An alpha needs heirs, needs. An alpha needs his mate. Philip interrupted gently. Everything else is secondary, and between you and me, I think those clear water healers were full of. He left before she could respond, but his words stayed with her as she sipped the warm milk. It was sweet and soothing, and despite everything, she felt herself finally relaxing. She was asleep within minutes. The next morning, Luella woke to find another breakfast tray and a note written in elegant handwriting. Pack meeting at noon. You're not required to attend, but you're welcome if you'd like to observe. The library is open if you'd prefer solitude. Tea pack meeting in clear water. Omegas were never allowed at pack meetings. They were told what they needed to know, when they needed to know it, and not a moment sooner. Luella dressed carefully in jeans and a soft blue sweater from the closet that had mysteriously filled with clothes overnight. Everything fit perfectly, from the bras to the shoes. Someone, probably Joni, had excellent judgment. She found the library on the second floor, exactly where Joni had shown her yesterday. It was a beautiful room with large windows, comfortable reading chairs, and thousands of books, organized by subject. Luella ran her fingers along the spines, marveling at the collection. History, fiction, science, mythology, everything a curious mind could want. She'd just settled into a chair with a book about Wolfpack Dynamics. When the door opened, a young woman entered, maybe 25, with honey blonde hair and the lean build of a runner. She stopped short when she saw Luella. "Oh," the woman said, "you're her." Luella sat down her book slowly. "I'm Luella. I know. Everyone knows." The woman moved closer, her hazel eyes assessing. "I'm Gail Fisher. I'm one of the Pack Scouts. And I'm also someone who's known Teodoro since we were teenagers." There was something in her tone, not quite hostile, but not friendly either. "It's nice to meet you," Luella said carefully. "Is it?" Gail crossed her arms. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you because I don't believe in playing games. A lot of us are confused about why Teodoro bought you a Barren Omega with no skills, no connections, no obvious value to the pack, and now he's claiming you're his mate." "I didn't claim anything," Luella said quietly. "He did." "And do you believe him?" The question hung in the air. Luella thought about the electric sensation, about Teodoro's amber eyes, about the way her heart raced when he was near. "I don't know what I believe yet," she admitted. "But I'm here for 3 days to find out." Gail studied her for a long moment. Then her expression softened slightly. "Fair enough. That's more honest than most people would be." She moved to the bookshelves, selecting a worn volume. "For what it's worth, I've never seen Teodoro act impulsively. If he says you're his mate, he believes it, whether you feel it, too. That's between you and him." She left without another word, but Luella noticed she'd left her book behind a collection of wolf mythology marked with sticky notes and annotations. Luella picked it up and found a passage highlighted. In rare cases, a mate bond may be suppressed by trauma, malnutrition, or deliberate magical interference. The bond exists but lies dormant until conditions allow it to manifest. Such bonds are considered the strongest as they must overcome significant obstacles to form. Her hands trembled as she read the words again. Suppressed by trauma, malnutrition, or deliberate magical interference. What if everything she'd been told was wrong? What if her body wasn't broken, just buried under years of neglect and abuse? At noon, Luella found herself standing outside the great hall where the pack meeting was being held. She could hear voices inside dozens of them, discussing territory boundaries, hunting schedules, maintenance needs. She almost turned away, almost retreated back to the library, but then she remembered Teodoro's note. "You're welcome if you'd like to observe. Not commanded, not expected, just welcome." Luella pushed open the door. Conversation stopped. Every wolf in the room, at least 60 of them, turned to stare at her. She felt her face burning, but forced herself to keep walking, searching for a place to sit at the back. Luella? Teodoro's voice carried across the hall. He stood at the front, commanding the room with effortless authority. Come here. Her feet moved before her brain could protest. She walked down the center aisle, feeling every eye on her, until she reached the front where Teodoro stood beside an empty chair. His chair, the Alpha's chair, and beside it, one that had been empty for years, the chair meant for the Alpha's mate. Sit, he said quietly, gesturing to the maid's chair. I can't, Luella whispered. I'm not. You're my guest, and you're welcome in any meeting I hold. His amber eyes held hers. Sit, please. Luella sat, her heart hammering so hard, she was sure everyone could hear it. Teodoro resumed the meeting as if nothing unusual had happened. He discussed patrol schedules with his guards, hunting territories with his trackers, upcoming celebrations with the pack mothers, and through it all, Luella sat beside him, gradually realizing what he'd done. He'd claimed her publicly. Not as his mate, not yet, but as someone under his protection, someone worthy of respect. Halfway through the meeting, when a younger wolf questioned a decision about border security, Teodoro leaned back in his chair, and his hand brushed against Luella's armrest, his pinky finger extended slightly, touching hers. That electric sensation flared again, stronger than before. And this time, Luella didn't pull away. After the meeting, Joni found her in the hallway. That was quite a statement, the healer said, approval in her voice, sitting you beside him in the mate's chair. Half the pack nearly fainted. I didn't know what it meant, Luella protested. He just told me to sit and I. Oh, you knew. Joni's smile was knowing. Maybe not consciously, but your wolf knew. Even if she's buried deep, she recognized that chair for what it represents. I don't have a wolf, Luella said automatically. It was what she'd been told her entire life. I've never shifted. Have you ever tried? I mean, really tried. In a safe environment with proper support. Luella thought back to her 16th birthday, when every young wolf was supposed to experience their first shift. She'd been in the clear water pack house surrounded by dozens of wolves who expected her to fail. When nothing happened, they'd laughed, called her defective, broken. She'd never tried again. I was afraid, she admitted. Of course you were. Fear is one of the strongest suppressants for a shift. Joni placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. But you're not in clear water anymore. You're in Shadow Pine, where you're safe, where you're valued. And if you want to try shifting again, I can help you now whenever you're ready. But Luella, Joanne's blue eyes were serious. I examined your aura while you sat in that meeting, and I saw something the clear water healers either missed or deliberately ignored. What? Your wolf is there. She's just sleeping very, very deeply. But she's there. The words hit Luella like lightning. Her wolf was there. She wasn't broken. She wasn't defective. She was just dormant. How do I wake her up? Luella whispered. That's something only you and Teodoro can figure out together. Because if you're truly mates, his alpha presence is the key. His wolf can call to yours, can coax her out of hiding, but it requires trust, vulnerability, a willingness to let him in completely before Luella could respond. Philip appeared at the end of the hallway. Alpha wants to see you, he told Luella, in the East Garden. The East Garden was a private space behind the pack house, enclosed by stone walls covered in climbing roses. A fountain bubbled in the center, surrounded by benches and autumn flowers that somehow still bloomed despite the cold. Teodoro stood by the fountain, his back to her. When he heard her approaching, he turned, and the look on his face made her breath catch. Hunger, pure, undisguised hunger. But he held himself perfectly still, giving her space. How was the meeting? He asked, his voice slightly rough, overwhelming, but good, I think. Luella moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Why did you have me sit beside you? Because that's where you belong. I'm not your mate. Not officially. You said you wouldn't force anything. I'm not forcing anything, Teodoro interrupted. But I'm also not going to hide what you are to me. My pack needed to see that you're important, That you're protected, that anyone who disrespects you will answer to me personally, even if I leave after 3 days. His jaw tightened. Even then, though I'm hoping you won't. Why? The question burst out of her. Why me? You could have any female in your pack. Someone fertile, someone strong, someone who could actually give you everything an alpha needs. Why would you want a broken omega who? Teodoro moved faster than she could track, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. He didn't touch her, not yet, but he was close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. You are not broken, he said, his voice dropping into that alpha register that made her spine straighten involuntarily. Say it. What? What? Say. I am not broken. I want to hear you say it. I can't. You can, and you will. Because I'm tired of watching you flinch every time someone shows you basic decency. I'm tired of seeing you apologize for existing. You are not broken, Luella. You were neglected, abused, lied to, but you are not broken. Tears burned in her eyes. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He finally touched her, just his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing away the tear that had escaped. Because I can feel your wolf sleeping deep inside you. I can sense her every time I'm near you. And she's not broken either. She's just waiting. Waiting for what? For you to feel safe enough to let her out. Luella closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite herself. His hand was warm, calloused, gentle, everything his touch shouldn't be, given what he was, a powerful alpha who could snap her in half without effort. I'm scared, she whispered. I know, but you don't have to be scared of me. Never of me. His other hand came up to cradle her face, and when she opened her eyes, she found him staring at her with an intensity that stole her breath. I need to tell you something, and I need you to believe me. What? In 3 days, your body is going to go into heat. Luella froze. That's impossible. You've never been around your mate before. Never been in a safe environment. Never been properly fed and rested and cared for. His thumbs traced small circles on her cheeks. Your wolf has been dormant, but she's waking up. I can smell it on you, the change in your scent. The way your temperature slightly elevated the increased heart rate when I'm near. How can you possibly know? Because I'm an alpha who's found his mate. And my instincts are screaming at me that you're approaching your first heat. And when it comes, Luella, it's going to be intense, possibly overwhelming, and I need you to decide right now if you want me to help you through it or if you want me to stay away. The question hung between them, heavy and loaded. What happens if you help me? Luella asked, her voice barely audible. I'll claim you completely. The bond will snap into place and will be mated for life. There's no one doing it once it's done. His amber eyes searched hers. But if you're not ready, if you don't want that, I'll lock myself in the lower floors where I can't smell you. It'll be torture, but I'll do it. Because I meant what I said. I won't force this on you. And if you stay away during my heat, it'll be painful, dangerous, even for an omega going through their first heat without a mate to guide them. But Joni can help you. She's done it before for other unmated females. You'll survive. Survive. Such a small, terrible word. Luella thought about the last 7 years of her life. She'd survived in clear water barely. Survived the neglect, the abuse, the constant reminder that she was worthless. Survived being sold like livestock. She was tired of just surviving. I need to think, she said finally. Teodoro's hands dropped away immediately, giving her space. Take all the time you need. But Luella, whatever you decide, know this, I'm yours. Whether you claim me or not, whether we complete the bond or not, I am yours. That's what it means to find your mate. There's no one else for me. There never will be. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing in the garden with her heart racing and her mind spinning. 2 more days. In 2 more days, everything would change, one way or another. Chapter 4, The Suppressant. That night, Luella dreamed. She was running through a forest, but not as herself, as something else. Something with 4 legs and sharp senses, and a power she'd never known before. The world was alive with scents and sounds she couldn't process in her human form. Pine and earth and prey and mate. The scent hit her like a physical blow, and she changed direction mid-stride, racing toward it with single-minded intensity. She burst through a clearing and found him there, a massive black wolf with amber eyes, easily twice her size, radiating dominance and power, her mate. He lowered his head in a gesture that was somehow both submissive and possessive, inviting her closer. She approached cautiously, and when their noses touched, the world exploded into sensation. Luella woke with a gasp, her body covered in sweat and her heart racing. The sheets were tangled around her legs, and her skin felt too hot, too tight, like she was burning from the inside out. What was that? She stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face, but it didn't help. The heat was building, spreading through her body in waves that made her knees weak. She gripped the sink, staring at her reflection. Her eyes looked different, brighter, almost gold, instead of their usual brown. No, it's too soon, he said. 3 days, not 1. Another wave of heat crashed over her, and this time she smelled it. Her own scent changing, becoming richer and sweeter, the scent of an omega approaching heat. Panic clawed at her throat. She wasn't ready for this. Wasn't ready to make this decision. She'd planned to spend the next 2 days thinking, weighing her options, being rational. A knock on her bedroom door followed by Joni's voice. Luella, open the door, child. Luella barely made it to the door before her legs gave out. Joni caught her, surprisingly strong for a woman her age, and helped her back to the bed. It's happening, Luella gasped. The heat. It's why is it happening now? He said. 3 days. The mate bond is accelerating it. Joni pressed a cool cloth to Luella's forehead. Your wolf recognizes Teodoro. She's been dormant for so long. And now that she's found her mate, she's waking up fast. Too fast. What do I do? That depends. Do you want to complete the bond? I don't know. Luella's voice cracked. I don't know him. I don't know this pack. I don't know if I can trust any of this. Then we suppressed the heat. Joni was already pulling supplies from the medical bag she brought. I can give you herbs that will delay it, push it back for a few weeks. It'll buy you time to think clearly. But Luella, you need to understand this is only a temporary solution. Eventually, your heat will come. And when it does, it'll be even more intense because you'll have delayed it. I don't care. I just need time. Please. Joanne's expression was sympathetic but firm. This is going to hurt. The herbs fight against your wolf's natural instincts. It'll feel like you're being torn in two. I can handle pain. I know you can, but I need to tell Teodoro. He'll sense what's happening, and if I don't explain, no. Luella grabbed Joanne's wrist. Don't tell him. Not yet. I need a few hours to think without him nearby. Please. Joni hesitated, clearly torn between her duty to her alpha and her compassion for the terrified woman in front of her. Finally, she nodded. I'll buy you a few hours. But Luella, when an alpha's mate goes into heat, his instincts become nearly overwhelming. Teodoro has incredible control, but even he has limits. If your scent reaches him, I understand. Just please. The herbs tasted like bitter ash and regret. Luella choked them down, and within minutes, the heat began to recede. But Joni had been right. It felt like being torn apart from the inside. Her wolf, barely awake, was screaming in protest, desperate to find her mate. I'm sorry, Luella thought to the presence she could now feel inside her. I'm sorry, but I need more time. Her wolf's response was pure anguish. By dawn, Luella felt stable enough to move. The heat was suppressed, buried under layers of magical interference. But she could feel it lurking beneath the surface like a caged animal. She dressed carefully in loose clothing and made her way downstairs, hoping to avoid everyone. But Philip was in the kitchen making coffee. And the moment he saw her, his expression changed. What did you do? He asked quietly. I don't know what you. Your scent is wrong. Muted. Like you're wrapped in something that's blocking your natural pheromones. He set down the coffee pot. You took heat suppressants. It wasn't a question. Luella wrapped her arms around herself. I needed more time. Does Teodoro know? No. And I'd appreciate if you didn't tell him. Philip laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't understand what you're asking. When an alpha sense mate going into heat, it triggers something primal. Teodoro's probably been awake all night, fighting every instinct to break down your door. And now you want me to lie to him about why your heat suddenly vanished. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to give me time. Time for what? To run? To convince yourself that this bond isn't real? Philip moved closer, his expression intense. I've known Teodoro since we were 8 years old. I've watched him train, fight, lead, and sacrifice everything for this pack. And I've never not once seen him as happy as he was yesterday when you sat beside him in that meeting. So, forgive me if I'm not enthusiastic about helping you break his heart. The words stung because they were true. Luella had seen the hope in Teodoro's eyes, the barely contained joy when she'd accepted his touch in the garden. I'm not trying to hurt him, she said softly. I'm trying to protect myself. Philip's anger deflated slightly. From what? From making a mistake I can't undo. From binding myself to someone I barely know. She swallowed hard. From hoping for something that might not be real. It's real, Philip said. I promise you it's real, but I understand fear, and I understand that you've been hurt enough that trust doesn't come easily. He sighed. I won't tell him about the suppressants, but I won't lie if he asks me directly. Fair. Philip poured her a cup of coffee, adding cream and sugar without asking how she liked it. Somehow, he got it exactly right. For what it's worth, he said as she took the cup, Teodoro would wait forever for you. If you need a month, a year, a decade, he'd wait. Because that's what you do for your mate. But the suppressants are dangerous, Luella. They're not meant for long-term use. Eventually, you'll have to face this. I know, but knowing and being ready were two different things. Luella spent the morning in the library trying to read, but mostly staring at the same page for an hour. Her body felt wrong, disconnected, muffled, like she was experiencing the world through thick glass. The wolf inside her had gone silent, retreating back into dormancy rather than fight the suppressants. She'd made her wolf go to sleep again. After 7 years of silence, her wolf had finally woken up, and Luella had forced her back into the dark. The guilt was overwhelming. Around noon, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, deliberate footsteps that she recognized instantly. Teodoro appeared in the doorway, and Luella's breath caught. He looked terrible, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight with tension. His amber eyes found her immediately, and something flickered in them. Relief, anger, hurt. You took suppressants, he said. Not a question, a statement. How did you? I'm your mate. I can sense these things. He moved into the room but kept his distance as if afraid getting too close might shatter something fragile between them. Why? I needed time to think. And you couldn't think while going through heat. No, I couldn't. Luella set down her book, forcing herself to meet his eyes. You asked me to make a decision that would change my entire life forever. And then my body started making that decision for me before I was ready. So, I took control the only way I knew how. Teodoro was quiet for a long moment. Then, he moved to the window, staring out at the forest with his hands clasped behind his back. The posture made him look older, warier. Do you know what it's like? He said quietly. To finally find the person you've been searching for your entire adult life, only to have them recoil from you. I'm not recoiling. You took suppressants rather than let your body naturally connect with mine. You drugged yourself to avoid the bond. He turned to face her, and the raw pain in his expression made her chest ache. What do you call that if not recoiling? I call it self-preservation. Luella said, her own anger rising. I call it not wanting to make a permanent decision while I'm hormonally compromised. I call it trying to maintain some agency over my own body, after spending 7 years having no agency at all. I'm not trying to control you, aren't you? You bought me. You brought me here. You put me in the mate's chair in front of your entire pack. You told me I'm going into heat in 3 days. As if that's something I should just accept and prepare for. Where in any of that did I have a choice? The accusation hung between them like poison. Teodoro flinched as if she'd struck him. I gave you a choice. I said you could leave after 3 days if you wanted. With money in a car and your charity following me everywhere I go. That's not a real choice, Teodoro. That's a consolation prize. Luella stood, her hands shaking. You want to know why I took the suppressants? Because, for the first time since you bought me, I made a decision about my own body. Not you, not Joni, not my former pack, me. And if that hurts your feelings, then maybe you need to examine why you think you're entitled to my heat, just because we might be mates. The silence that followed was deafening. Teodoro's amber eyes were dark with emotions she couldn't read. For a moment, she thought he might argue, might assert his dominance as alpha, and demand she submit. Instead, he said, "You're right." Luella blinked. What? You're right. I've been so focused on the bond, on what I want, on what I believe is best for you that I haven't actually listened to what you need. He moved closer slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wanted. I'm sorry. I bought you to save you from a worse fate. But I didn't stop to consider that being bought at all, even with good intentions, is traumatic. I've been treating this like a courtship when what you actually need is space to heal. The apology was so unexpected, so sincere that Luella felt her anger draining away. I don't know how to do this, she admitted quietly. I don't know how to trust someone who has this much power over me. Even if you're kind, even if you mean well, you're still an alpha and I'm still an omega. And the power imbalance is significant, I know. Teodoro stopped a few feet away, close enough to talk, but far enough to give her breathing room. So, here's what we're going to do. You're going to stay here as long as you want. Not 3 days, not 3 weeks, but however long it takes for you to feel safe. And during that time, I'm going to court you properly. No pressure about heats or bonds or mating. Just getting to know each other like people do when they're not operating under werewolf instincts. And if I never feel ready, his jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Then I'll accept that, because forcing you to complete a bond you don't want would destroy everything that makes you who you are. And I'd rather spend eternity wanting you from a distance than have you hate me up close. Luella stared at him, searching for deception, for manipulation, for any sign that this was a trap, but all she saw was sincerity and a bone-deep exhaustion that matched her own. The suppressants will wear off in about 2 weeks, she said. Joni said, when the heat comes back, it'll be worse. Then we'll deal with it in 2 weeks. Together or separately, whatever you choose. You'd really wait 2 weeks. I'd wait 2 decades. He smiled, but it was sad. You're worth waiting for, Luella. Even if you don't believe that yet. He left before she could respond, and Luella sank back into her chair, her mind reeling. For the first time since she'd been sold, she felt like she might actually have a choice in what happened next, and that was more terrifying than anything else. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Luella was in the garden trying to clear her head when Gail Fisher appeared on the path. The scout looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from foot to foot like she was preparing for confrontation. Can I talk to you? Gail asked. Sure. They sat on a bench near the fountain, and for a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Gail said, I owe you an apology. Yesterday I was rude, suspicious. I questioned your worth to the pack. You had every right to be suspicious. Luella said, I would be too if I were you. Yeah, but I was operating from jealousy, not logic. See, I've had a thing for Teodoro since we were teenagers. Nothing serious. He never showed interest, but I always thought maybe someday he'd see me differently. and then he comes back from that auction with you, claiming you're his mate. And she sighed. I reacted badly. I understand. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been handed something a dozen females in this pack would kill for, and you're running from it. You took suppressants rather than complete the bond, and I can't figure out if you're brave or stupid. The bluntness was oddly refreshing. Luella considered her answer carefully. Maybe both, she said finally. I'm terrified of him. Not because he's cruel. He's the kindest person I've ever met. But because he has the power to destroy me completely. If I give him everything and he decides I'm not enough, he won't. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Because I've seen Teodoro lead this pack for 9 years. I've watched him make impossible decisions, sacrifice his own happiness for others, put everyone's needs before his own, and I've never not once seen him give up on someone he cares about. Gail turned to face her fully. If he says you're his mate for life. Even if you reject the bond, even if you leave, he won't choose anyone else. That's just who he is. That sounds like a prison, or it sounds like unconditional love. Depends on your perspective. Gail stood, brushing off her jeans. Look, I'm not saying you should rush into anything. Take your time. Figure out what you want, but don't assume that Teodoro's feelings are as fragile as the other men you've known. He's an alpha. When we commit completely. She walked away, leaving Luella alone with her thoughts and the sound of water trickling in the fountain. Unconditional love. Luella had never experienced that before. Her parents had died when she was young, and the aunt who'd raised her had done so out of obligation rather than affection. The Clearwater Pack had tolerated her until she became inconvenient. Every relationship in her life had been conditional, temporary, dependent on her ability to be useful. What did it mean to be loved regardless of usefulness? Regardless of fertility? Regardless of strength or beauty or worth? What did it mean to be loved just for existing? The question terrified her because if she let herself believe in that kind of love, and it turned out to be false, she wouldn't survive the disappointment. That evening, dinner was delivered to her room by a young male Omega named Guy Bolton, who worked in the kitchens. He couldn't have been more than 19 with freckles and nervous energy. Alpha wanted to make sure you ate, Guy explained, setting the tray on her table. It's roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. Cook made apple pie too, but I might have snuck you an extra slice because, welcome to Shadowpine and stuff. The kindness was so genuine that Luella smiled, despite herself. Thank you, Guy. No problem. Hey, can I say something? He didn't wait for permission. I heard about the suppressants, and I just wanted you to know that I get it. Last year, I wanted to suppress my heat because I wasn't ready to be courted yet. Joni helped me, and nobody judged me for it. So if anyone gives you grief about it, you tell me, and I'll no glare at them meaningfully or something. Luella laughed a real laugh. The first in days. I'll keep that in mind. After Guy left, she ate slowly, savoring the food. Everything was perfectly cooked, seasoned with care. Someone in that kitchen actually gave a damn about what she was eating. She was halfway through the apple pie when she heard it, a low, mournful howl from somewhere in the forest. It was answered by another, then another, until the night was filled with the song of wolves calling to each other. Luella moved to the window and looked out at the moonlit territory. She could see them now. Dozens of wolves shifted and running through the trees, playing, hunting, existing in their true forms without fear or shame. And standing alone on a hill overlooking the pack house was a massive black wolf with amber eyes, Teodoro. Even from this distance, she could feel his gaze on her window. He wasn't howling like the others. He was just watching, waiting. The wolf inside her stirred, pushing against the suppressants, desperate to answer his call. The pain of denying her was sharp enough to make Luella gasp. I'm sorry, she thought again. I'm so sorry. But she didn't open the window, didn't call out to him. She just watched until he finally turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving her alone with her guilt and her fear and her desperate, terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, this could all be real. Chapter 5. Tipping Point. The next 5 days passed in a strange suspended reality. Luella found a routine in Shadowpine that felt both foreign and comforting. She woke each morning to breakfast trays that appeared outside her door like magic. She spent her days in the library reading everything she could find about mate bonds, werewolf biology, pack dynamics. She took walks through the territory, always accompanied by either Philip or Joni, learning the boundaries and meeting pack members who ranged from cautiously welcoming to openly curious. And every evening she had dinner with Theodoro, not in the formal dining room, but in small, intimate spaces. The garden, when weather permitted, his office with takeout containers spread across his desk. Once in the kitchen at midnight, when neither of them could sleep, making grilled cheese sandwiches and talking about everything except the bond hanging between them. He courted her the way humans courted, with conversation and attention and small gestures that had nothing to do with biology. He asked about her favorite books and actually read them so they could discuss the plots. He showed her his favorite places in the territory: a waterfall hidden in the northern woods, a meadow where wildflowers bloomed even in autumn, a cave system that housed ancient pack records. He never touched her beyond the occasional brush of fingers when handing her something. Never pushed, never demanded. It was driving Luella slowly insane because the suppressants were wearing off. She could feel it in the increasing restlessness, the way her skin felt too sensitive, the dreams that were becoming more vivid and explicit. Her wolf was waking up again, and this time she was angry. You rejected him. Her wolf seemed to whisper in the quiet moments. You rejected us. On the 6th day, Luella woke drenched in sweat with Teodoro's name on her lips. The heat was coming back exactly as Joni had warned, and it was coming back with a vengeance. She made it to the bathroom before her legs gave out, gripping the cool tile floor as waves of need crashed over her. This was different from before. Were more intense, more focused. Her body knew exactly what it wanted and who it wanted it from. She needed to find Joni. Needed more suppressants. Needed. The bedroom door opened. Luella's head snapped up to find Teodoro standing in the doorway, his chest heaving like he'd run up the stairs. His eyes were pure gold now, his wolf right at the surface. I could smell it from my office, he said, his voice rough. Your heat, it's breaking through the suppressants. Get out, Luella gasped. You need to leave. I can't. I know. I'm going. But he didn't move. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, knuckles white with the effort of controlling himself. But I need you to understand something first. This heat is going to be worse than the first one. Your body delayed it once and now it's compensating. If you take suppressants again, you risk permanent damage to your fertility. I don't care. Yes, you do, because you're not actually barren, Luella. You never were. And if you keep drugging yourself to avoid this bond, you'll make that lie a truth. His amber eyes pinned her in place. Is that really what you want? To destroy your fertility just to avoid me? The accusation hit like a physical blow. That's not fair, she whispered. Nothing about this is fair. Not for you. Not for me. Not for the wolves we're supposed to be. He took one step into the room, then stopped himself. I'm going to the lower levels. I'll lock myself in until your heat passes. But Luella, I need you to know, if you reject this bond, if you choose to never complete it, I will respect that choice. I'll never touch you, never claim you, never force anything, but I can't watch you destroy yourself. Trying to deny something that's written into your very DNA. You don't understand. I understand that you're terrified. I understand that trusting someone with that much power over you feels impossible. I understand that every instinct you have is telling you to run. He dragged a hand through his hair, the gesture speaking to a frustration that went so deep. But running from this won't make it go away. It'll just make you miserable, and I can't stand watching you suffer. Then stop watching." The words came out harsher than she'd intended, and she saw him flinch. For a moment, his carefully controlled expression cracked, and she saw the raw hurt beneath. "As you wish," he said quietly. He left, closing the door behind him with careful precision. A minute later, she heard his office door slam, then footsteps descending the stairs toward the lower levels where the pack kept secure rooms for wolves who needed isolation. He was really leaving, locking himself away so she could suffer through this heat alone rather than risk making her uncomfortable with his presence. Luella pressed her face against the cool tile and tried to convince herself this was what she wanted. Joni arrived within 10 minutes, her medical bag in hand and her expression grim. "He told me," the healer said, kneeling beside Luella about the heat breaking through. "How bad is it?" "Bad. Getting worse." Luella could barely form coherent sentences. Every nerve ending was on fire, screaming for relief that only one person could provide. "I need more suppressants." "No." Luella's head jerked up. "What?" I said. "No, I won't give you more suppressants." Teodoro was right. Another dose could cause permanent damage. Your body is already fighting against artificial interference. If I add more chemicals to the mix, I can't guarantee what will happen. Joanne's blue eyes were sympathetic, but immovable. "You have two choices. Complete the bond with Teodoro, or let the heat run its course naturally without him. How long will it last without a mate? 3 to 5 days of intense discomfort, fever, chills, muscle aches, overwhelming arousal that can't be satisfied. It won't kill you, but it'll feel like dying. 3 to 5 days. Luella wanted to laugh at the cosmic cruelty of it. "What if I complete the bond?" she heard herself ask. Joan's expression softened. "Then it'll be over in hours, not days. The bond will snap into place. Your wolf will settle and you'll experience the kind of completion that most werewolves only dream about. But Luella, you can't do it just to escape the discomfort. Once a bond is completed, there's no breaking it ever. You'd be tied to Teodoro for the rest of your life." "Would that really be so terrible?" The question surprised them both. "Only you can answer that," Joni said gently. "But I think you need to ask yourself, are you running from Teodoro specifically, or from the idea of being vulnerable with anyone? Because those are very different things." She left Luella with supplies, cold compresses, herbal tea that would help with the fever, thick blankets for when the chills hit, but no suppressants, no easy way out. Luella crawled back to bed and tried to think through the haze of heat and need. Teodoro had been nothing but kind, patient, understanding. He'd given her space when she needed it, had backed off when she asked, had literally locked himself away to avoid pressuring her during her most vulnerable moment. He was everything the Clearwater males hadn't been. Everything she'd secretly hoped for during those long, lonely years when she'd convinced herself she'd never be anyone's mate. So why was she still running? Because if I give him everything and it turns out to be a mistake, I'll have nothing left, she thought. Because hope is more dangerous than despair. Because I've spent so long being nothing that the idea of being everything to someone terrifies me. Her wolf stirred, pushing against her consciousness with increasing insistence. "He's our mate. Why are you doing this to us?" "Because I'm scared," Luella whispered to the empty room. "So is he. But he's still here, still waiting, still hoping." Was that true? Was Teodoro as scared as she was? Luella thought about the exhaustion in his eyes, the careful way he controlled himself around her, the raw hurt when she told him to stop watching. He was an alpha, powerful, confident, commanding, but he was also a man who'd been searching for his mate for 13 years. A man who'd finally found her and was being held at arm's length while she decided if he was worth the risk. That had to hurt, probably hurt more than he'd ever admit. Another wave of heat crashed over her, and this time it came with a scent memory. Pine and earth, and something uniquely Teodoro. Her body reacted immediately, arching into the phantom sensation of touch that wasn't there. She needed him, not just wanted needed, with an intensity that went beyond physical desire into something primal and essential. Her wolf howled in agreement. Go to him. Claim him. Make him ours. I can't, Luella gasped. I'm not ready. You'll never be ready. There's no perfect moment, no guarantee of safety. There's just him and us and the choice to be brave enough to try. The wolf's words echoed in her mind long after the voice faded. Philip found her 4 hours later, huddled in bed with a fever of 103 degrees. Jesus, he muttered, pressing a hand to her forehead. You're burning up. Where's Joni? She left, said I had to ride it out naturally. Luella's teeth were chattering despite the fever. Where's Teodoro? Lower levels, locked in one of the secure rooms. He made me promise not to let him out until your heat passed, no matter what he said or did. Philip's expression was grim. He's not doing well, Luella. I can hear him from 3 floors up. He's fighting every instinct he has to stay away from you. How long has he been down there? 6 hours, and it's killing him. Literally driving him half mad with the need to protect you, comfort you, help you through this. Philip sat on the edge of the bed, his expression more serious than she'd ever seen it. I'm going to say something, and you can be mad at me if you want. But someone needs to tell you the truth. What truth? That you're not just hurting yourself with this decision. You're hurting him, too. And, yeah, I get that you've been hurt, that you've got trauma and trust issues, and every reason to be cautious. But Teodoro has been nothing but patient and kind and respectful of your boundaries, and you're punishing him for the sins of wolves who aren't him. The words landed like arrows, each one finding its mark. I'm not trying to punish him, aren't you? Because from where I'm sitting, you took his kindness and threw it back in his face. You took suppressants rather than let your body naturally connect with his. You're choosing days of agony over hours of completion with someone who's proven he'd do anything for you. If that's not punishment, what is it? It's self-preservation, Luella said, but the words sounded weak even to her own ears. No. It's self-destruction because you're so afraid of being hurt that you're refusing to let yourself be happy, and in the process you're destroying the one person who could actually make you happy. Philip stood, his movements sharp with barely contained anger. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I am going to tell you this. Teodoro Wagner is the best man I've ever known. He's loyal, honest, brave, and so decent. It sometimes makes me want to punch him, and if you walk away from him, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. He left before she could respond, and Luella was alone again with her fever, her fear, and her wolf's increasingly insistent demands. Go to him. Stop being a coward. Go to him. What if it doesn't work? Luella whispered. What if the bond snaps into place, and I realize I've made a terrible mistake? What if it does work? What if you find everything you've ever wanted? What if you discover that being loved is better than being safe? The question hung in the air unanswered because Luella didn't have an answer. She just had fear and hope and a choice that felt too big to make. But the fever was getting worse, the heat was intensifying, and somewhere 3 floors below, her mate was locked in a room, fighting his own battle against instincts that demanded he come to her. They were both suffering, both fighting, both terrified of the same thing, that taking this leap might destroy them or save them. Luella pulled the blankets tighter and tried to convince herself she was making the right choice. But her wolf's words kept echoing. You'll never be ready. There's no perfect moment. No guarantee of safety. There's just him and us and the choice to be brave enough to try. Was she brave enough? She was about to find out. Chapter 6. The Claiming. Midnight came with a fever that broke 104 degrees. Luella lay in bed, her body alternating between burning heat and violent chills. The sheets were soaked with sweat, her muscles ucked like she'd been beaten, and the overwhelming consuming need, had reached a point where she couldn't think about anything else. She could hear wolves moving through the pack house. Quiet footsteps in the hallways, hushed conversations that stopped when they passed her door. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone was waiting to see what she'd choose. Complete the bond and end the suffering, or endure 3 more days of this hell because she was too scared to take the leap. Around 2:00 a.m., her wolf stopped asking and started demanding enough. I've been silent for 7 years. I've been patient while you made excuses. But I will not spend 1 more minute suffering because you're too afraid to claim what's ours. Go to him. The command came with such force that Luella found herself sitting up despite the fever, despite the weakness in her limbs, despite every rational thought, screaming that this was a bad idea. Her wolf wasn't asking permission anymore. She was taking control. Luella's feet hit the floor, and she was moving before her conscious mind caught up, down the hallway, past the curious stares of 2 young wolves on patrol duty, down the main staircase to the first floor. "Ma'am?" One of the guards stepped forward. "You shouldn't be out of bed," the healer said. "Where is he?" Luella's voice came out rough, barely recognizable. The guards exchanged glances, the lower levels. The female guard said quietly, but Alpha left strict instructions not to be disturbed. "Take me to him, we can't." That wasn't a request. Luella met their eyes, and for the first time in her life, she felt her wolf rise to the surface, felt the power that had been dormant for so long finally waking up. "Take me to my mate now." The command in her voice, the Alpha, command that should have been impossible for an Omega, made both guards straighten their spines. "Yes, ma'am," the male guard said, clearly shocked. They led her down 2 more flights of stairs into the lower levels of the pack house. The air here was cooler, damp, and thick with the scent of earth and stone. Security doors lined the hallway, each one reinforced with silver to contain wolves who needed isolation. At the end of the hall, one door was closed, and from behind it came sounds that made Luella's heart clench. Growls, thuds, the scrape of claws against stone. "He's been like that for hours," the female guard said softly. "Fighting his wolf, fighting his instincts. He's in pain, ma'am, real pain because of her, because she'd been too scared to accept what they both needed." "Open it," Luella said. "Are you sure? When an alpha is in this state, he's not entirely rational. If he smells your heat, open the door." The guards looked at each other. Then the male pulled out a key card and swiped it through the reader. The lock clicked open with a sound that seemed too loud in the quiet hallway. "We'll be right outside if you need us," the female guard said. Luella pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was sparse concrete walls, a single cot, a small bathroom visible through an open doorway, and in the center of it all, pacing like a caged animal, was Teodoro. He'd partially shifted. His hands were claws, his eyes pure gold, his canines elongated. His shirt was in shreds on the floor, revealing a muscled chest covered in a sheen of sweat. He looked dangerous. Feral every inch, the predator that werewolf legends warned about. The moment she entered, he froze. His head snapped toward her, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. The scent of an Omega in heat, finally ready for her mate, Luella. Her name came out as a growl. "You shouldn't be here. I know. I can't control myself around you right now. My wolf is too close to the surface. If you stay, I know," she said again, stepping further into the room. The door clicked shut behind her, and she heard the lock engage. The guards were giving them privacy. "I came here because I'm done running." Teodoro went utterly still. "What?" "I'm done running from you, from the bond, from everything I'm too scared to hope for." Luella's voice shook, but she kept moving forward until she was standing directly in front of him. "Philip was right. I've been punishing you for things you didn't do, making you pay for every wolf who ever hurt me. And that's not fair, Luella." His voice cracked. "If you're only here because the heat is making you desperate, I'm here because my wolf finally knocked some sense into me. Because I realize that being safe and alone is worse than being vulnerable with you." Because she reached up, her hand trembling, and placed it against his chest, right over his heart, which was pounding as hard as hers. Because I want to try. I want to see if this bond is real. I want to be brave enough to let someone love me. The last words came out as barely a whisper. Teodoro stared down at her, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes. The human side fighting for control, the wolf's side demanding he claim what was finally being offered. "If we do this," he said, his voice strained, "there's no going back. The bond will be permanent. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours for the rest of our lives. Are you absolutely sure?" "No," Luella admitted. "I'm terrified. I have no idea if this is the right choice. But I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions for me." Something shifted in his expression. The gold in his eyes brightened, and when he finally moved, it was with a careful control that must have cost him everything. He cupped her face in his clawed hands, gentle despite the sharp points, and tilted her head up so she had no choice but to meet his gaze. "I need to hear you say it," he said. "I need explicit consent before we go any further. Tell me what you want. I want you to claim me." The words felt like jumping off a cliff. "I want to complete the bond. I want to be your mate." The last thread of his control snapped. Teodoro's mouth crashed down on hers with a desperation that spoke to 6 days of restraint finally breaking. The kiss was claiming possessive, hungry everything Luella had secretly wanted but been too afraid to admit. Her hands fisted in what remained of his shirt as she kissed him back with equal intensity. The heat that had been torturing her suddenly had focus, direction, purpose. This was what her body had been demanding. This was what her wolf had been screaming for. Him, always him, only him. Teodoro broke the kiss long enough to growl. "Bed now." He lifted her like she weighed nothing, and Luella wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her to the small cot. It barely fit both of them, but neither cared. The moment her back hit the mattress, Teodoro was covering her body with his weight pressing her down in a way that should have felt confining, but instead felt safe. "Last chance," he said, his voice barely human. "Tell me to stop and I will. I'll lock myself in the bathroom and stay there until your heat passes. But if we continue, I'm going to claim you completely, mark you, bond you, make you mine in every way that matters." Luella looked up at him, at the male who'd bought her freedom, who'd given her time and space and patience she didn't deserve, who was offering her one more escape route, even though it was clearly killing him. "I don't want you to stop," she said. "I want you to show me what it means to be someone's mate." The sound he made was pure wolf, triumphant and possessive, and so full of relief it made her chest ache. "Then hold on," he said, "because I've been waiting 13 years for you, and I'm not gentle when it comes to things I want to keep." Hours later, or maybe minutes, Luella had lost all sense of time. She lay boneless and satisfied beneath Teodoro's bulk. The heat that had been consuming her was gone, replaced by a bone-deep contentment she'd never experienced before. And something else, something new and bright and impossibly strong. The bond she could feel Teodoro in her mind now, not in words, but in sensations. His satisfaction, his overwhelming joy, his protective instincts that wrapped around her like a physical shield, and beneath it all, a love so fierce and complete it made her want to cry. "Can you feel it?" he asked, his voice rough from exertion. He was propped on his elbows above her, his amber eyes searching hers, the bond. "Yes." Luella traced her fingers along his jaw, marveling at the fact that she could touch him freely now. "It's overwhelming. It'll settle in a few days. Right now, everything's heightened because the bond is new." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, then her nose, then her lips soft. Reverent kisses that contrasted sharply with the claiming that had just occurred. "How do you feel? Complete," she said honestly. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete." Teodoro's expression softened into something so tender it made her breath catch. "Good, because you are complete. You always were. You just needed someone to reflect that truth back at you." He rolled to the side, taking her with him so she was tucked against his chest. One of his hands came up to rest on her neck. Right over the mark, he'd left a claiming bite that would identify her to every wolf they encountered as his mate. Luella traced her fingers over his own neck where her much smaller bite mark sat. She'd marked him too, claimed him just as thoroughly. They were equals in this bond regardless of pack rank or designation. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for making you wait for fighting this so hard for." Odoro tilted her chin up. "You have nothing to apologize for. You needed time to feel safe, and I understand that. What matters is that you chose this eventually, that you chose me. How are you so understanding? Most alphas would be furious that their mate rejected them, even temporarily. Most alphas haven't been searching for their mate for 13 years. Most alphas haven't experienced the despair of thinking they might never find their other half." His thumb traced the bond mark on her neck, and she felt the gesture echo through their connection. "I would have waited 13 more years, if that's what you needed. Because you're worth waiting for, Luella. You've always been worth it." The sincerity in his voice made something crack open in her chest. Something that had been locked tight for so long she'd forgotten it was there. "I love you," she heard herself say. The words came out rushed, almost surprised. "I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other, but I can feel it through the bond." And Theodoro kissed her quiet. When he pulled back, he was smiling. A real smile that transformed his entire face. "I love you too," he said. "I've loved you since I saw you on that auction platform, looking terrified and defiant at the same time. I've loved you through every dinner, every conversation, every moment you pushed me away because you were too scared to let me close. And I'm going to love you for the rest of my life." Luella buried her face in his chest and let herself cry, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being chosen, being wanted, being loved for exactly who she was, broken parts and all. "We should probably get out of this room eventually," Teodoro said after her tears had subsided. "The pack is going to want to celebrate. There's a whole mating ceremony tradition we're supposed to follow. Can we stay here for a few more hours?" Luella asked. "I'm not ready to share you yet." She felt his satisfaction through the bond before he even spoke. "We can stay as long as you want. The pack can wait. Right now, the only thing that matters is you and me." He pulled a blanket over them both. And Luella let herself relax completely for the first time since the auction. She was safe. She was loved. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. Her wolf, finally quiet, purred with contentment. "I told you," she seemed to say. "I told you he was ours." "You were right," Luella whispered. Teodoro stirred. "What?" "Nothing. Just talking to my wolf." "What's she saying?" "That she's insufferably smug about being right." Luella smiled against his chest. "Good. I want to meet her, your wolf. I want to run with her under the full moon and show her what it means to be free." The promise in his words made her heart race because she'd never shifted successfully, never experienced what it meant to run as a wolf. But with Teodoro beside her, with the bond strengthening her, maybe now she could. "Soon," she promised, "but not tonight. Tonight I just want this, you and me, and nothing else." "Then that's what you'll have," Teodoro said. "Tonight and every night after for the rest of our lives, and for the first time in 7 years." Luella believed in forever. Chapter 7. Trials of Leadership. Luella woke to sun streaming through a window she didn't remember being there and the warm weight of Teodoro's arm draped across her waist. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories crashed back, the heat, the choice, the claiming, and she felt her face flush with a mix of embarrassment and satisfaction. She was mated, permanently, irrevocably mated to an alpha, who was currently snoring softly against her neck, his breath warm on her skin. The bond hummed between them like a living thing, feeding her sensations. She was still learning to interpret contentment, protectiveness, and underneath it all, a bone-deep satisfaction that made her want to purr like a cat. "We did it," her wolf said smugly. "We finally claimed our mate." "You're very pleased with yourself," Luella whispered. "I have every right to be. I've been trying to wake you up for 7 years." Teodoro stirred at the sound of her voice, his arm tightening around her waist as he pulled her closer. "Morning?" he mumbled, his voice rough with sleep. "You talking to your wolf?" "She's being insufferable. She earned it." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder, right above the claiming mark that would now identify her as his mate, to every wolf who saw her. "How do you feel?" Luella took inventory. The fever was gone. The overwhelming need had subsided into something manageable. And her body felt different, stronger, more alive, like something that had been dormant for years had finally clicked into place. "Good," she said, honestly, "really good. Is that normal?" Completing a bond has healing properties. Your body was fighting against years of neglect and suppression. Now that the bond is in place, you'll start recovering properly. He propped himself up on one elbow to look at her, his amber eyes soft. "Give it a few weeks and you'll barely recognize yourself. A few weeks, the bond takes time to fully settle. Right now, everything's new and intense, but gradually you'll adjust. Your wolf will get stronger. Your senses will sharpen. And you'll probably go through a growth spurt as your body catches up to where it should have been all along." Luella stared at him. "A growth spurt? I'm 23 and you were malnourished and neglected for most of your life. Your body never fully matured because it didn't have the resources." His expression darkened. The Clearwater Pack has a lot to answer for. Before Luella could respond, a knock sounded on the door, hesitant, almost apologetic. Alpha Philip's voice carefully neutral. "The pack is asking about you and Joni wants to check on Luella." Teodoro sighed. "We should probably face the world eventually. Do we have to?" He laughed, the sound vibrating through their bond in a way that made her smile. Unfortunately, yes. Being Alpha comes with responsibilities." But he leaned down to kiss her thoroughly, taking his time until she was breathless. "We can take our time getting ready." 30 minutes later, showered and dressed in clothes that Philip had thoughtfully left outside the door, Luella followed Teodoro up from the lower levels. Her legs were shaky, partly from exertion, partly from nerves, but she forced herself to keep moving. The pack house was unusually quiet. Too quiet. "Where is everyone?" Luella whispered. "Probably in the Great Hall," Teodoro said, "waiting to congratulate us or interrogate us. Possibly both." He wasn't wrong. The moment they entered the Great Hall, 60 pairs of eyes locked onto them. The pack had assembled every member from the oldest elders to the youngest children, and they stood in complete silence as Teodoro led Luella to the front of the room. She could feel their eyes on her neck, on the claiming mark that was impossible to hide. Could sense their curiosity, their skepticism, their judgment. "They think I'm not good enough for him," she thought. "Then they're idiots." Her wolf snapped back. "We're exactly good enough. Better than good enough. We're perfect for him." The fierce certainty in her wolf's voice made Luella straighten her spine. She might be an Omega. She might be from a pack that had sold her like property, but she was Teodoro's mate. And that meant something here. Teodoro raised his hand, and the murmuring that had started died instantly. "I'm sure you've all noticed by now," he said, his voice carrying easily across the room, "that Luella and I have completed our mate bond. As of last night, she is officially my mate and your Luna." Luna. The word sent a shock through Luella's system. She'd been so focused on the mate bond that she hadn't considered the political implications. As Alpha's mate, she wasn't just Teodoro's partner, she was second in command of the entire pack. The silence stretched for a beat too long. Then Joni stepped forward, her blue eyes bright with approval. "Welcome to the family, Luna," she said formally, then shocked everyone by pulling Luella into a fierce hug. "About damn time." The gesture broke the tension. Wolves began moving forward. offering congratulations and cautious welcomes. Some were genuine, like Guy, who bounced up with his characteristic enthusiasm and declared that he'd bake a special cake for the occasion. Others were more reserved, clearly waiting to see if this Omega from a disgraced pack would be able to handle the responsibility of being Luna. Gail Fisher was among the reserved group. She approached slowly, her hazel eyes assessing Luella with new intensity. "Congratulations," she said. "I meant what I said before. Teodoro doesn't do anything without reason. If he chose you, there's a reason. Thank you." I think it wasn't entirely a compliment. Being Luna isn't just about being the alpha's mate. It's about leading, making hard decisions, putting the pack's needs before your own. Can you do that? The challenge was clear. Luella felt Teodoro tense beside her, felt his protective instincts flare through the bond, but she placed a hand on his arm, stopping him from intervening. "I don't know," Luella said. "Honestly, I've never led anyone before. I've never been responsible for more than my own survival, but I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to work harder than anyone expects to prove I'm worthy of this position." Something shifted in Gail's expression. Not quite approval, but maybe respect. "Fair enough," she said. "I'll reserve judgment until I see what you're capable of." She walked away and Luella released the breath she'd been holding. "That went better than expected," Philip said, appearing at her other side. "Gail doesn't usually give people second chances. She didn't give me a first chance. That was more like a probationary period," Philip grinned. "Welcome to pack politics, Luna. It's all probationary periods and proving yourself over and over again." The rest of the morning was a blur of introductions and barely concealed assessments. Luella met the pack's teachers who ran the school for young wolves, the hunters who provided food for the pack, the builders who maintained the territory structures, the healers who worked under Joanne's supervision. Each interaction felt like a test she wasn't entirely sure she was passing. By noon, her head was pounding and the bond was transmitting Teodoro's growing concern. "You need a break," he said quietly, pulling her aside. "This is overwhelming for anyone, let alone someone who's been through what you've been through. I'm fine. You're exhausted. I can feel it through the bond." He guided her toward their office, ignoring the curious stares. "We're taking an hour. The pack can survive without us for 60 minutes. The office was exactly as Luella remembered. Warm, lived in, comfortable. But now there was a second desk beside Theodoro's already set up with fresh notebooks and pens. "I had it brought in this morning," he explained. "I figured you'd need your own workspace. Luna has responsibilities separate from the Alpha's duties." Luella stared at her desk, and felt something crack in her chest. "What responsibilities?" she asked quietly. "I don't know how to be a Luna. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Teodoro pulled her down onto the leather couch, settling her against his side in a position that was becoming familiar. "You learn same way I learned to be Alpha, through trial and error, guidance from the elders, and a willingness to admit when you don't know something. What if I'm terrible at it? Then we'll figure it out together. But Luella, you've survived 7 years of abuse and neglect. You've maintained your humanity when most wolves would have broken. You've stayed kind and hopeful despite having every reason to become bitter. Those qualities make you exactly the kind of Luna this pack needs. The pack doesn't trust me yet. No, they don't, but they will. Once they see you're committed to their well-being, once you prove you're not going to abandon them, they'll trust you. It just takes time." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "And I'll be beside you every step of the way." Through the bond, Luella felt his absolute certainty. He believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. "What are Luna's responsibilities?" she asked. "Officially, you're second in command. If something happens to me, you lead the pack. You mediate disputes, especially those involving females or children. You oversee domestic matters, food distribution, housing assignments, education. You represent the pack in negotiations with other packs, particularly when it comes to alliances or territorial agreements. Luella felt her panic rising. That's a lot. It is, but you don't have to master it all at once. We'll start small. Today you're just going to rest and let the bond settle. Tomorrow, Joni can show you around the territory properly, introduce you to key pack members in smaller groups. Next week, you can start sitting in on disputes. Everything else can wait until you're ready. And if I'm never ready, Teodoro turned her to face him, his amber eyes serious. Then we'll find a different approach. Being Luna doesn't mean you have to fit into a predefined role. You can shape the position to match your strengths. If you're better at one aspect than another, we emphasize that. If you need to delegate certain responsibilities, we delegate. This isn't a dictatorship, Luella. It's a partnership. The word partnership settled something in her chest. Not a hierarchy where she was expected to submit, but a genuine collaboration where her input mattered. Okay, she said. I can try that. That's all I'm asking for you to try. He pulled her closer, and she felt his contentment through the bond when she relaxed against him. Now, tell me what you're feeling through the bond right now. Luella closed her eyes and focused on the connection between them. It was easier now than it had been this morning, like her brain was learning a new language. You're worried about me, she said, but also happy, really, really happy. And she concentrated harder, protective. Fiercely protective. Like you'd fight anyone who threatened me. That's the alpha in me. It's instinctive when it comes to mates. I'd tear apart anyone who tried to hurt you. He said it so casually, like discussing the weather, but Luella felt the truth of it through the bond. He meant every word. What else? He prompted. You're hungry. No, starving. When did you last eat? Yesterday afternoon. I've been locked in the lower levels since yesterday evening, remember? Guilt crashed through her. She'd been so focused on her own suffering that she hadn't considered his. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. I chose to lock myself down there, and I'd do it again if that's what you needed. He stood, pulling her up with him. But you're right that I'm starving. Let's go raid the kitchen before Guy gets any ideas about that celebration cake. The kitchen was mercifully empty, except for 2 women working on dinner preparations. They looked up when Luella and Teodoro entered, their expressions shifting from surprise to carefully neutral politeness. Alpha. Luna, the older woman said, can we help you with something? Just looking for lunch, Teodoro said. Don't let us interrupt. But the women had already stopped working, clearly uncomfortable with the alpha and his new mate invading their space. Luella recognized the dynamic immediately. It was the same tension she'd experienced in Clearwater, where Omegas were expected to be invisible when higher-ranking wolves were present. Please continue with what you were doing, Luella said gently. We're just going to make sandwiches. The younger woman, barely 20, with nervous energy, glanced at her companion, then back at Luella. Luna, you don't need to make your own food. We can prepare something. I want to make it. Luella moved to the refrigerator, pulling out bread, cheese, and cold cuts. Besides, I like cooking. It's relaxing, that was a lie. She'd never particularly enjoyed cooking, but she recognized an opportunity to set a precedent. She wasn't going to be a Luna who expected to be waited on constantly. The 2 women exchanged glances, clearly uncertain how to handle an alpha pair who was making their own lunch. But gradually, they returned to their work, and the kitchen filled with the comfortable sounds of meal preparation. Teodora watched her with amusement as she assembled sandwiches with more care than necessary. You're making a point, he said through the bond. Is it working? Yes, they're already less tense. You're good at this, at making sandwiches, at reading people and adjusting to make them comfortable. That's a valuable skill for a Luna. The praise warmed her more than it should have. She finished the sandwiches and turned to find both women watching her with something that looked almost like approval. Thank you for not disrupting our work, Luna. The older woman said. Most high-ranking wolves expect everyone to stop what they're doing and cater to them. I'm not most high-ranking wolves, Luella said. I'm an Omega who got lucky enough to find her mate, and I haven't forgotten what it's like to be at the bottom of the hierarchy. The words hung in the air for a moment. Then the younger woman smiled a real genuine smile. I think you're going to be a good Luna, she said shyly. It was the first unqualified approval Luella had received all day, and it meant more than the woman probably realized. They ate lunch in Teodoro's office. Their office now discussing pack business that Luella barely understood, but tried to follow anyway. Territory boundaries, patrol schedules, upcoming meetings with neighboring packs. There's a gathering next month. Teodoro said, all the regional alphas meet to discuss territorial disputes and alliance matters. You'll need to attend as my Luna. A gathering of alphas, Luella said faintly. That sounds terrifying. It's political theater mostly. A lot of posturing and showing off, but it's important for them to meet you, to understand that Shadowpine now has a Luna and that we're a united front. What if I embarrass you? Teodoro set down his sandwich and took her hand. You couldn't embarrass me if you tried. But Luella, I need you to understand something. The other alphas are going to test you. They're going to see an Omega Luna from a disgraced pack and assume you're weak. They're going to push boundaries, make veiled insults, try to get a reaction. And what am I supposed to do? Stand your ground. Don't apologize for who you are. Remember that you're my mate, which means you're one of the most protected wolves in this region. Anyone who disrespects you is disrespecting me, and they know it. His amber eyes were fierce. You have power now, Luella. You just need to learn how to use it. Power. The word felt foreign in her mouth, but through the bond she felt Teodoro's absolute certainty that she could handle this. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. That evening, Joni arrived with an armful of books. Luna training, she announced, dropping them on Luella's new desk. Pack history, werewolf law, traditional ceremonies, diplomatic protocols. You've got a lot of reading ahead of you. Luella stared at the stack. At least 15 heavy volumes. All of this? Just the basics. There's more in the library if you want to go deeper. Joni settled into one of the chairs, looking pleased with herself. But don't worry. I'm not expecting you to memorize everything overnight. Think of this as a reference library for when questions come up. What kind of questions? Everything from, what's the proper greeting for a visiting alpha? To, how do I mediate a dispute between two wolves who both think they're right? Juni's expression turned serious. Being Luna means being the pack's counselor, mediator, and sometimes therapist. Wolves will come to you with problems they don't feel comfortable bringing to Teodoro. You need to be prepared for that. The responsibility felt crushing. But before Luella could spiral into panic, Teodoro's hand landed on her shoulder, warm and grounding. One step at a time, he reminded her. You don't have to be perfect immediately. Listen to your mate. Joni said, he's right. But Luella, I also want you to know you're not alone in this. I've been Luna's advisor for 3 generations. If you have questions, if you need guidance, if you just need someone to vent to, I'm here. We all are. The pack wants you to succeed. Even the ones who don't trust me yet, especially them, because once you prove yourself, their loyalty will be absolute. Shadowpine wolves don't give trust easily. But once it's earned, it's unshakable. Joni stood, heading for the door. Oh, and one more thing. Your heat will return in about 3 weeks. It'll be milder. Now that the bond is complete, but you should still prepare. Talk to Teodoro about how you want to handle it. Some mates prefer privacy. Others don't mind if pack business continues as usual. She left before Luella could respond. And the silence that followed was loaded with implications. 3 weeks, Luella said faintly. Well, figure it out when it happens, Teodoro said. For now, let's just focus on getting through today. Today, just today, Luella could handle that. She hoped. Chapter 8. Ghosts from Clear Water. 3 days after completing the bond, Luella's old life came back to haunt her. She was in the library struggling through a dense text on werewolf diplomatic protocols when Philip burst through the door with an expression that made her stomach drop. "We have a problem," he said. "The Clear Water Pack is here." Luella's book slipped from her fingers. "What?" "Alpha Gideon Martin and Beta Brock Cherry. They're at the border demanding an audience with Teodoro. They're claiming he stole pack property, and they want restitution." Pack property. They meant her. Luella stood on shaking legs, her wolf rising with a snarl that surprised them both. "Where's Teodoro?" "Eastern border with the patrol unit." "I've already sent word, but it'll take him 20 minutes to get back. And the Clearwater Wolves are getting aggressive. They're threatening to file a formal complaint with the regional council if we don't. I'll handle it." Phillips stared at her. "Luna, with all due respect, you've been mated for 3 days. You don't have to. They sold me." Luella's voice came out harder than she'd intended, edged with the anger she'd been suppressing for days. "They called me barren and worthless, and sold me to the highest bidder. And now they're calling me property. No, I'm handling this through the bond." She felt Teodoro's alarm spike, felt him change direction and start running toward the pack house at full speed. But she also felt something else. His reluctant pride that she was willing to stand her ground. "Be careful," his voice whispered through their connection. "Don't let them provoke you." "I won't. But I'm not hiding from them either." Philip looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. "I'll come with you, and I'm bringing Gale and 3 of our best fighters, just in case." The eastern border was a 15-minute drive through dense forest. Luella sat in the passenger seat of Philip's truck, her hands clenched in her lap to keep them from shaking. Through the bond, she could feel Teodoro getting closer, his wolf pushing him faster than should be possible. "Wait for me," he urged. "Don't engage until I'm there. I'm just going to talk to them." "That's all, Luella. Trust me, please." The hesitation that came through the bond was palpable. "But finally, I trust you. But if they threaten you, if they so much as look at you wrong, I want you to step back and let Philip handle it." Agreed. The border was marked by a line of ancient trees, their trunks carved with territorial symbols. On the shadow pine side, 4 guards stood at attention, weapons visible but not drawn. And on the clear water side, Luella saw the 2 men who had shaped her nightmare. Alpha Gideon Martin looked exactly as she remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of classic handsomeness that fooled people into thinking he was noble. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and his blue eyes held the same cold calculation they'd always had. Beside him, Beta Brock Cherry wore a smirk that made Luella's skin crawl. He was the one who tied her wrists with silver rope, who'd called her house-trained, who'd backhanded her when she dared to protest. "Well, well," Brock said as Luella emerged from the truck. "Look who it is. Come back to beg for forgiveness." Luella forced herself to keep walking until she stood directly across from them, the borderline between her feet and theirs. Philip flanked her left side, Gale her right, and she felt the protective stance of the 3 fighters behind her. "I'm not here to beg for anything," Luella said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm here because you're threatening my pack, and as Luna of Shadowpine, I'm asking you to state your business and leave." The title Luna made both men blink. Gideon recovered first, his expression shifting to something calculating. "Luna," he repeated. "So the rumors are true. The Barren Omega we sold for pocket change somehow convinced an alpha to mate her. Impressive." "Careful," Philip warned, his voice dropping into a growl. "That's your Luna you're speaking to." "She's not my Luna. She's a wolf who was born into my pack, lived off my resources for 23 years, and was legally sold to settle a debt, which makes her my psi property until that debt is satisfied." Gideon's smile was cold, and I don't believe a legitimate transaction occurred. I believe Alpha Wagner coerced Brock into accepting a low-ball offer, which means the original debt stands. Luella felt her wolf surge forward, felt the power that had been dormant for so long, finally waking up fully. You're lying. Teodoro paid $3,000 in cash. Brock accepted it willingly and signed the transfer papers. Under duress. An alpha's presence is inherently coercive to lower-ranking wolves. Any lawyer would argue the transaction was invalid. Gideon stepped closer to the border, and his eyes locked onto the claiming mark on Luella's neck. But I'm willing to compromise. Return to clear water. Annul your mate bond. And I'll consider the matter settled. The audacity of it stole her breath. You can't annul a completed mate bond. Gale said flatly. Even you aren't that stupid, can't I? Bonds have been broken before under extreme circumstances, and I'd argue that coercion qualifies as extreme. Gideon's smile widened. Of course, if the Luna refuses to cooperate, I'll have no choice but to file a formal complaint with the regional council. I'll demand a hearing, present evidence of Alpha Wagner's misconduct, and request that Shadowpine pay restitution for stolen property. Say $50,000. 50,000. 10 times what Teodoro had paid. You're insane, Luella said. I'm a businessman. And you, my dear, are a commodity that was undervalued at sale. Now that you've proven yourself fertile, I never said I was fertile. You're an alpha's mate. Trust me, you're fertile. The clear water healers were clearly incompetent, which means we sold defective merchandise based on false information. That entitles me to compensation. Gideon's expression turned cruel. Or you could just come home. Save everyone the trouble. We'd even be willing to take you back, find you a nice beta male who doesn't mind used goods. The growl that ripped from Luella's throat surprised everyone, including herself. It was pure wolf, pure rage, pure rejection of everything Gideon represented. I am not property, she snarled. I was never your property. I was a member of your pack who you neglected, abused, and sold because it was convenient. And now you have the audacity to show up at my territory, threaten my mate, and demand that I come back to the pack that threw me away. Luella Phillips' hand on her arm was gentle but firm. Step back. But she couldn't. 7 years of suppressed rage was bubbling to the surface, and her wolf was done being silent. You want to file a complaint? Go ahead. I'll tell the regional council exactly how Clear Water Pack treats its omegas. I'll describe every beating, every insult, every meal I was denied because I wasn't useful enough. I'll explain how you tied me up with silver rope that left burns on my wrists for days. I'll detail how you sold me to the first buyer who would take me no questions asked, because paying your gambling debts was more important than my safety. Gideon's expression darkened. Watch your tone, Omega. You might have fooled the Shadowpine Alpha, but I know what you really are. A worthless Barren, a massive black wolf exploded from the forest, moving so fast it was barely visible. One moment, Gideon was standing at the border. The next, he was on his back with Teodoro's jaws inches from his throat. Teodoro had shifted mid-dun, and now he stood over the clear water alpha in a position of absolute dominance. His lips were pulled back in a snarl that promised violence, and through the bond, Luella felt his rage burning like wildfire. Nobody calls my mate worthless. Nobody. Teodoro, don't. Luella started forward, but Philip caught her arm. Let him handle this, the beta said quietly. Gideon crossed a line. This is alpha business, now. Brock had stumbled backward, his pale. The clear water guards who'd accompanied them looked ready to bolt, and Gideon, pinned beneath a wolf that outweighed him by at least 50 pounds, had gone very, very still. Teodoro shifted back to human form, but he didn't move off Gideon. He crouched over the other alpha, naked and feral and absolutely terrifying. You have 10 seconds to leave my territory, Teodoro said, his voice barely human. And if I ever hear that you've contacted Luella again, if you ever threaten her, if you so much as think about filing a complaint against her, I will challenge you to formal combat and I will kill you. Do you understand me? Gideon nodded, his throat working. Say it. I need to hear you say you understand. I understand. The words came out choked. Teodoro stood, allowing Gideon to scramble to his feet. The Clearwater Alpha was trembling. Actually trembling as he backed toward his side of the border. This isn't over. Gideon tried one last time. Yes, it is. Teodoro's voice was flat. Final. You sold her. You gave up any claim to her the moment you accepted my money. She belongs to Shadowpine now. She belongs to me. And if you ever forget that, I'll remind you in ways you won't enjoy. Brock was already dragging Gideon away, muttering urgently about not antagonizing an alpha on his own territory. The Clearwater guards followed, and within minutes, the forest had swallowed them completely. The moment they were gone, Teodoro turned to Luella, his amber eyes still wild. Are you okay? Did they hurt you? I'm fine. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair as he took deep breaths, clearly trying to calm his wolf. I heard what he said through the bond, the worthless comment, and I couldn't let that stand. He's a coward and a liar. His opinion doesn't matter, but it hurt you. I felt it through the bond. Teodoro pulled back, cupping her face in his hands, and when my mate is hurt, my wolf demands retribution. Your wolf is a little dramatic. My wolf is protective of what's his. He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. But you handled that well. Better than I expected, honestly. You stood your ground, didn't let him intimidate you, and you were about 3 seconds away from shifting and ripping his throat out yourself. I was. Your eyes were changing. I could see your wolf right at the surface. Teodoro's smile was proud. She's getting stronger. Another few weeks, and I bet you'll be able to shift completely. The idea sent a thrill through Luella and terror in equal measure. What if I can't control it? Then I'll teach you. That's what mates do. We help each other become the best versions of ourselves. He finally seemed to notice he was still naked and glanced at Philip. Someone want to grab me some clothes? Philip tossed him a bag from the truck, already prepared. I've learned to carry spare clothes whenever you're around. As Teodoro dressed, Luella found herself replaying the confrontation. The way Gideon had looked at her, not with recognition or regret, but with calculation, like she was still a commodity he could exploit. He's going to file that complaint, isn't he? She said quietly. Teodoro's expression hardened. Probably. Gideon's the type to push until someone pushes back harder, but let him try. The regional council knows his reputation. They know Clearwater Pack has issues with how they treat their omegas. And when they see that you're my mate, that you're thriving in Shadowpine, they'll dismiss his complaint as what it is. Sour grapes from an alpha who lost a valuable asset. I'm not an asset. No, you're not. You're my mate, my Luna, and the most important person in my life. But to Gideon, you're a bargaining chip he lost, and he's going to have to live with that. Teodoro took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Come on, let's go home. You've had enough drama for one day, but the drama wasn't over. They'd barely returned to the pack house when Joni met them at the door, her expression grim. We have a visitor, she said, a representative from the regional council. She says there's been a complaint filed and she needs to investigate immediately. Luella felt her stomach drop. Already? It's been less than an hour. Gideon must have filed it before he came to the border. He was planning this. Teodoro's jaw tightened. Where is she? Your office. And Teodoro? She's not friendly. I prepare for a hostile interrogation. The representative was a severe-looking woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. She wore the formal robes of a council mediator, and she didn't stand when Teodoro and Luella entered. Alpha Wagner, Miss Martin. The deliberate refusal to use Luella's title was telling. I'm Mediator Esther Bartlett from the Regional Council. I'm here to investigate allegations that you, Alpha Wagner, coerced Beta Brock Cherry into selling Miss Martin under false pretenses, and that you've subsequently held her against her will. That's absurd. Teodoro said, I paid fair market value, and Luella is my mate. The bond is complete and willing. So you claim, however, I need to speak with Miss Martin privately to verify that claim. Mate bonds have been falsified before, and the council takes allegations of trafficking very seriously. Trafficking? Luella's voice came out sharp. You think Teodoro trafficked me? I think Alpha Martin of Clearwater has filed a very detailed complaint, complete with testimony from multiple pack members, suggesting that you were coerced into this bond, and until I can verify otherwise, I'm obligated to investigate. Esther's cold gaze locked onto Luella. So, I'll ask you directly, Miss Martin. Are you being held here against your will? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Luella felt Theodoro's worry through the bond. Felt his desperate hope that she'd defend him, defend them, defend the bond that had changed everything. And she also felt the weight of what this woman was really asking. Is this real, or are you just another Omega who learned to perform happiness to survive? No, Luella said, her voice steady. I'm not being held against my will. I'm exactly where I want to be. Esther's expression didn't change. Then you won't mind answering some questions in private without your mate present to influence your responses. Through the bond, Luella felt Theodoro's instinct to refuse, to keep her close, to protect her from this woman's interrogation. But she also felt his understanding that refusing would only make them look guilty. It's okay, Luella said quietly. I'll talk to her. Luella, I'll be fine. Go check on the pack. I'll handle this. Teodoro hesitated, then nodded. But before he left, he pulled her close and whispered, Tell the truth, all of it. Don't try to protect me or make things sound better than they were. If this is real, and it is, then the truth will prove it. He left and Luella was alone with the mediator who held her future in her hands. Sit, Esther commanded, pulling out a recording device. This interview will be documented and submitted to the regional council as part of the formal investigation. Do you consent to being recorded? Yes. State your full name for the record. Luella Martin, and you claim to be the willing mate of Alpha Teodoro Wagner of Shadow Pine Pack. I don't claim to be. I am his mate. The bond is complete and willing. Luella met Esther's cold gaze. And before you ask more questions, I want you to understand something. I was sold by the Clearwater Pack, not rescued, not transferred, sold like property. And Teodoro bought me to save me from a worse fate. Everything that came after was my choice. Esther's pen still on her notepad. Explain, and Luella did. She explained everything. The years of neglect in Clearwater, the false diagnosis of barrenness, the auction where she was sold to pay Gideon's gambling debts. She described Teodoro's patience, his willingness to give her time, the suppressants she'd taken because she was terrified of the bond. She left nothing out. Not her fear, not her mistakes, not the moments when she'd pushed Teodoro away because she was too damaged to believe someone could love her. When she finished, Esther was quiet for a long moment. That's quite a story, the mediator finally said. It's the truth. And you expect me to believe that an Alpha paid $3,000 for a supposedly barren Omega out of the goodness of his heart. No. I expect you to believe he paid $3,000 for his mate. Because he could sense the bond even when I couldn't. Because he was willing to take a risk on someone everyone else had given up on. Luella leaned forward, and I expect you to recognize that Clearwater Pack has a pattern of abusing their Omegas and selling them when they become inconvenient. I'm not the first mediator, Bartlett. I'm just the first one who ended up somewhere safe enough to speak out. Something flickered in Esther's expression. Not quite sympathy, but maybe understanding. Show me your wrists, she said abruptly. Luella held out her hands, and Esther examined the faint silver scars that still marked her skin from the auction rope. These are relatively recent, Esther said quietly. Within the last 2 weeks, 10 days actually. From when Brock Sherry tied me up for the auction, he said the rope wasn't necessary, but he enjoyed the theater of it. Esther made a note, her pen moving quickly and the claiming mark on your neck. May I examine it? Luella tilted her head, exposing the bite mark that would forever identify her as Teodoro's mate. Esther leaned close, studying it with a healer's eye. This is a true mate mark, she said almost to herself. The scar pattern, the placement, the depth. This can't be faked. You are genuinely bonded to Alpha Wagner. I know, I tried to tell you, but that doesn't mean the bond was formed under ideal circumstances. Mate bonds can form even in coercive situations, especially when one party is vulnerable. Esther sat back, her expression thoughtful. However, based on your testimony and the physical evidence, I'm inclined to believe your version of events, which means Clearwater Pack has some very serious questions to answer. Relief flooded through Luella, so intense she felt dizzy. So, you're not going to separate us? No, but I'm going to recommend a full investigation into Clearwater Pack's treatment of their omegas. If what you're saying is true, and I believe it is, then Alpha Martin has been operating outside council regulations for years. That's a serious violation that could result in sanctions, fines, or even removal from leadership. The idea of Gideon losing his position as Alpha was so satisfying that Luella almost smiled. What happens now? Now I write my report, submit it to the council, and recommend that the complaint against Alpha Wagner be dismissed. I'll also recommend that Clearwater Pack be placed under council supervision pending investigation. Esther stood, gathering her materials. For what it's worth, Miss Martin, Luna Martin, I'm sorry for what you've been through, and I'm glad you found your way to a pack that values you. The acknowledgement of her title, Luna, felt like a victory. When Esther left, Luella found Teodoro pacing in the hallway, his anxiety palpable through the bond. The moment he saw her, he pulled her into his arms. How did it go? He asked. She believed me. She's dismissing the complaint and investigating Clearwater instead. The relief that flooded through the bond was overwhelming. Teodoro buried his face in her hair, his whole body shaking slightly. I was so scared. He admitted that she'd take you away, that the council would side with Gideon because he's an established alpha and he trailed off. You're? What? I'm an alpha who bought his mate at an auction. It doesn't exactly look good on paper. Luella pulled back to look at him. But you didn't buy me because you wanted property. You bought me because you wanted to save me. There's a difference. The council doesn't always see differences. They see rules and regulations and precedent. His amber eyes were troubled. What if next time someone files a complaint, the mediator isn't as understanding? What if? Then we'll deal with it together. Luella cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. But Teodoro, you need to stop expecting the worst. We're mated. We're bonded. We're building a life together. And no complaint, no investigation, no bitter ex-alpha is going to change that. He kissed her then, hard and desperate and full of relief. When they finally broke apart, he was smiling. You're right, he said. I'm being paranoid. You're being protective. It's different. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Now come on. I want to celebrate not being separated by showing you exactly how grateful I am that you're my mate. The heat that flared through the bond made her blush. Luna Martin, Teodoro said with mock seriousness, are you propositioning your alpha? Yes. Is that allowed? It's encouraged. He swept her up into his arms, carrying her toward their rooms while she laughed. Highly encouraged. Behind them, Philip called out, should I cancel your afternoon meetings? Cancel everything? Teodoro shouted back. The Luna and I are busy. And for the first time since the auction, Luella felt completely perfectly safe. Chapter 9. The Shift. 2 weeks after Gideon's failed complaint, Luella woke to a sensation she'd never experienced before. Her wolf clawing at the inside of her skin, demanding to be let out. It wasn't painful exactly, more like an overwhelming pressure. As if something that had been compressed for too long was finally demanding space. She could feel her wolf's presence more clearly than ever. Not as a separate entity, but as an integral part of herself that had been dormant for 23 years. Today, her wolf said with absolute certainty, "Today we shift." Luella sat up slowly, careful not to wake Teodoro, though she felt his consciousness stirring through the bond. The pre-dawn light filtered through the curtains, casting their bedroom in shades of gray and gold. She moved to the window and looked out at the shadow pine territory. Somewhere in that forest, wolves were finishing their night patrol, returning to their human forms to sleep before the new day began. They made it look so easy, the shift from human to wolf and back again, as natural as breathing. For Luella, it had always been impossible, the one truth she'd accepted about herself, even more fundamental than her supposed barrenness. She couldn't shift. She was broken in a way that went beyond fertility. Broken at the very core of what it meant to be a werewolf. Except she wasn't broken. She never had been. You were suppressed, her wolf reminded her. Starved, neglected, abused into silence. But I was always here, always waiting. I'm scared. Luella whispered to the window, to herself, to the wolf pressing against her consciousness. I know, but you don't have to be scared anymore. We're safe now. We're strong now, and we're ready. Arms wrapped around her waist from behind, and Teodoro's chin came to rest on her shoulder. Through the bond, she felt his wakefulness, his awareness of what was happening. She's ready, he said quietly. Not a question. Yes, but I don't know if I am. You are. You've been ready for weeks. You just didn't realize it. He pressed a kiss to her neck right above the mate mark. Your wolf has been getting stronger every day. I can sense it. The way you move, the way you react to things, even the way you smell, it's all changing. You're becoming who you were always meant to be. Luella turned in his arms to face him. What if I can't control it? What if I shift and I can't shift back? What if? What if it's the most natural thing you've ever done? Teodoro's amber eyes were gentle. What if your wolf has been waiting so long that the moment you finally let her out, everything just clicks into place? You really believe that? I know it, because I can feel your wolf through the bond, and she's not some wild, uncontrollable force. She's you, Luella. The part of you that's been locked away and silenced for so long that you forgot she existed. But she's not separate from you. She is you. The words settled something in Luella's chest. Her wolf wasn't something to be feared or controlled. She was just another aspect of herself. The part that had been denied expression for 23 years. Will you help me? Luella asked. I don't know how to do this on my own. Of course, that's what mates do. Teodoro took her hand. Get dressed. We're going to the northern meadow. It's private, secure, and far enough from the pack house that you won't feel pressured by an audience. The northern meadow was exactly as Teodoro had described it during their early courtship, a wide expanse of grassland surrounded by dense forest, with a small creek running along one edge. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Philip was waiting for them along with Joni. The beta and the healer stood at a respectful distance, giving them space but ready to help if needed. You told them? Luella asked. I told Philip. Who told Joni? She's a healer. She should be here in case something goes wrong. And Philip. Teodoro glanced at his beta with a small smile. Philip's been my best friend since we were 8. If something's important to me, he's there. That's just how it works. The simple declaration of friendship made Luella's throat tight. In clear water, she'd never had friends. Never had anyone who showed up just because they cared. Are you ready? Teodoro asked. No, but let's do it anyway. He led her to the center of the meadow where the grass was soft beneath her bare feet. She'd changed into loose clothing that could be easily removed. A tank top and sweatpants that Philip had brought along with several towels and blankets. First shift is different for everyone, Teodoro explained, his voice calm and instructive. For some people, it happens in seconds. For others, it takes hours. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The key is to stop fighting your wolf and let her guide you. How do I do that? Close your eyes. Focus on the bond between you and your wolf. Feel where she is in your consciousness. He moved behind her, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. Now ask her what she needs. Luella closed her eyes and did as he instructed. It was easier now than it would have been weeks ago. The bond with her wolf had been strengthening daily, and she could feel her presence clearly. Not as a separate voice, but as an instinct, a knowing that lived somewhere beneath rational thought. "What do you need?" she asked silently. Her wolf's answer was immediate. "Freedom, release, permission to exist. She needs me to let go," Luella said aloud, then let go. Teodoro's hand squeezed her shoulders gently. "I'm right here. You're safe. Let your wolf out. It should have been harder." Everything Luella had been taught about shifting suggested it required intense concentration, perfect control, years of practice. But the moment she gave her wolf permission, the moment she stopped fighting and started trusting, everything else fell away. The shift began in her chest, a warmth that spread outward like ripples on water. She felt her bones begin to change, restructuring themselves in ways that should have been agonizing, but somehow weren't. Her muscles stretched and reformed. Her senses sharpened until she could smell everything. Teodoro's pine and earth scent, Philip's nervous energy, Joanny's calm curiosity, the rabbits hiding in the forest edge, the fish in the creek, and then she was falling forward. Except she wasn't falling. She was changing positions, dropping to 4 legs that felt more natural than 2 ever had. When she opened her eyes, the world looked different. Colors were muted, but movement was sharper. Sounds were clearer, and she was small, so much smaller than she'd expected. Not the massive wolf that Teodoro became, but something more delicate, faster. She looked down at her paws, gray-brown with white markings, and felt a surge of joy so intense it made her want to howl. "We did it," her wolf sang. "We're finally whole, Luella." Teodoro's voice was thick with emotion. "Look at you." She turned to face him and saw tears in his eyes. Through the bond, she felt his overwhelming pride, his relief, his absolute certainty that she was perfect exactly as she was. He shifted in seconds, his massive, black wolf appearing where the human had stood. He was easily twice her size, all power and dominance, and controlled strength. But when he approached her, it was with careful gentleness, as if she were something precious that might break. Their noses touched, and the bond flared so bright it was almost blinding. "Mine," Teodora's wolf said through their connection, "not possess, but reverent. My mate, perfect and whole in mine. Yours," Luella's wolf agreed, "and you're ours." From the edge of the meadow, she heard Joanny's delighted laugh. "She's beautiful. A gray wolf with Luna's markings. Look at the white on her chest. That's the mark of leadership. She's fast too," Philip added. "Look at those legs. I bet she could outrun half the patrol unit." But Luella barely heard them. She was too focused on Teodoro. On the way, he was looking at her like she'd hung the moon. And then he was backing away, crouching low in a playbow that was an unmistakable invitation. "Run with me," he urged. "Let me show you what it means to be free." So she ran. She burst forward with a speed that surprised them both, her legs eating up the distance faster than should be possible for a wolf her size. Teodoro chased after her, and for the first time in her life, Luella understood what it meant to be a werewolf. This was what she'd been denied, this joy, this freedom, this absolute rightness of existing in her true form. They ran through the meadow and into the forest, weaving between trees with an agility that would have been impossible in human form. Teodoro stayed close but never crowded her, letting her set the pace, letting her discover her own capabilities. When they finally stopped at a small waterfall hidden deep in the territory, Luella was panting but exhilarated. She'd never felt so alive, so present, so completely herself. Teodoro shifted back to human form, and after a moment of concentration, Luella managed to do the same. The shift back was easier than the shift out had been, as if her body remembered what it was supposed to be. She stood on shaking legs, completely naked and covered in a light sheen of sweat, and found Theodoro watching her with an expression that made her flush. "That was incredible," she gasped. I didn't know it could feel like that." "Like what?" "Like coming home. Like finally being complete." She laughed, the sound bright with disbelief. I shifted. "Teodoro, after 23 years of being told I was broken, I actually shifted." He pulled her into his arms, and she felt his pride and joy and love flooding through the bond in waves. "You were never broken. You were suppressed. And now you're free because of you. Because you gave me a place where I felt safe enough to let my wolf out." "We did this together," Teodoro corrected. "Your wolf was always there. She was just waiting for the right moment. For the right person to believe in her." Luella pressed her face against his chest and let herself cry, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. She'd spent so many years believing the lie that she was fundamentally flawed, that some essential part of being a werewolf had been denied to her. And now she knew the truth. She'd been whole all along. When they returned to the meadow, Joni was waiting with towels and warm clothes. She pulled Luella into a fierce hug the moment she was decent. "I knew it," the healer said. "I told you your wolf was just sleeping. And what a wolf she is. Fast, graceful, and those Luna markings. The pack is going to lose their minds when they see you." "Luna markings?" Luella asked. "The white patches on your chest and paws. They're rare. Only certain bloodlines carry them. They mark you as natural leadership, someone born to guide and protect." Joanne's blue eyes were bright with satisfaction. "The old legends say wolves with Luna markings are blessed by the moon herself. Don't fill her head with superstition," Philip said, but he was smiling. "Though I will say, Luna, you're fast. I've never seen a first shift wolf move like that." "It felt natural," Luella admitted, "like something I'd been doing my whole life. Even though I'd never done it before. That's how it should feel. Shifting isn't something you learn. It's something you remember. Your wolf knows what to do. You just had to trust her." They walked back to the pack house together, Luella leaning against Teodoro's side as exhaustion caught up with her. Shifting took energy, and her body was still adjusting to the demands of transformation. When they entered the great hall, conversation stopped. Every wolf present turned to stare at Luella, and she saw the exact moment they recognized what had changed. Her scent was different now, richer and more complex. The scent of a wolf who'd finally claimed her birthright. She shifted. Someone whispered. The whisper spread through the room like wildfire. Wolves began standing, moving closer, their expressions ranging from shock to approval to genuine joy. Guy was the first to speak up, his voice carrying across the hall. Luna shifted. The Barren Omega, who supposedly couldn't shift, managed it in less than a month with Shadowpine. The comment meant a celebration, made several wolves flinch, but Luella smiled because Guy was right. She'd done in 3 weeks what the Clearwater healers had declared impossible, and that was worth celebrating. Gail Fisher pushed through the crowd, her hazel eyes assessing. "I want to see her in wolf form." It wasn't a request. It was a challenge, not hostile, but definitely testing. The pack needed to see their Luna's wolf with their own eyes, needed to judge her strength and speed and worth. Luella met Teodoro's eyes, and through the bond she felt his question. "Are you ready for this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." She shifted in the middle of the great hall. In front of 60 watching wolves, the transformation was easier this time, faster. And when she stood on 4 legs with her gray-brown coat and white, Luna markings clearly visible, she heard the collective intake of breath. "She's beautiful," someone said. "Look at those markings. She's smaller than I expected, but look at her legs. She's built for speed." Gail approached slowly, giving Luella time to react. When she reached out to touch Luella's head, it was with respect rather than dominance. "You're Luna," she said quietly. In name and in truth. Welcome to the pack, sister. The formal acceptance made something crack in Luella's chest. Sister, not subordinate, not property, not tolerated presence. Sister, one by one, the other wolves approached to offer their own acceptance. Not all of them, there were still a few holdouts. Wolves who weren't sure an outsider deserved their Luna's position, but enough that Luella felt the shift in pack dynamics. She was no longer just Teodoro's mate. She was their Luna, and she'd proven herself worthy of the title. When the crowd finally dispersed, Luella shifted back to human form and found herself swaying with exhaustion. Teodoro caught her before she could fall, lifting her easily into his arms. "That's enough excitement for one day," he said. "You need rest, but you should rest. Let your body recover from 2 shifts in one day. Everything else can wait." He carried her up to their rooms, and Luella was asleep before her head hit the pillow. She dreamed of running through the forest, of chasing rabbits, and splashing through streams and howling at the moon. She dreamed of the pack running beside her, accepting her as one of their own. She dreamed of Teodoro's black wolf and her gray-brown wolf running side by side through territory that would forever be their home. When she woke hours later, it was to the sound of celebration outside. Music, laughter, the smell of roasting meat. "What's happening?" she asked, groggy. Teodoro appeared in the doorway holding a tray of food. Guy convinced the pack mothers to throw an impromptu celebration. Apparently, the Luna's first shift is a traditional cause for celebration, even if it happens later than usual. They're celebrating for me. They're celebrating you. There's a difference. He sat down the tray and sat on the edge of the bed. Eat something, then get dressed. The pack wants to run with their Luna under the full moon. Luella looked out the window and saw that evening had arrived while she slept. And, yes, the moon was rising full and bright and impossibly beautiful. "I've never run with a pack before," she admitted. "Then tonight you'll learn." Teodoro's smile was warm. "And Luna, your wolf is going to love it." He was right. When Luella shifted and ran out into the forest with 60 wolves surrounding her, protecting her, celebrating her, she finally understood what it meant to belong. Not as property, not as a tolerated presence, but as pack, as Luna, as someone who mattered. And when Teodoro's wolf pressed against her side, his contentment flooding through their bond, Luella howled a clear, joyful sound that was answered by every wolf in the territory. This, her wolf said, "This is what freedom feels like." And Luella, for the first time in her life, understood that she was finally completely perfectly free. Chapter 10. Full Circle. 3 months after her first shift, Luella stood in front of the full-length mirror in their bedroom. Barely recognizing the woman staring back at her, she'd grown 2 in. Teodoro had been right about the growth spurt. Her body had filled out with muscle and curves that came from proper nutrition and regular shifting. Her skin glowed with health. Her hair was thick and lustrous, and her eyes held a confidence that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. But the biggest change was internal. She could feel her wolf constantly now, not as a separate presence, but as an integrated part of herself. And through the bond with Teodoro, she felt complete in ways she'd never imagined possible. "You're staring at yourself again," Teodoro said from the doorway, amusement in his voice. "I still can't believe this is me." Luella turned to face him, taking in his formal attire, black suit, pressed shirt, the silver pin that marked him as Alpha of Shadow Pine. "Are you sure I'm ready for this, the regional gathering? You've been preparing for weeks. You know the protocols. You know the key players, and you know how to handle yourself." He moved closer, adjusting the collar of her dress, a deep blue that brought out her eyes. "But more importantly, you're my mate and my Luna. That's all the qualification you need. The other alphas are going to test me. You said so yourself, and you're going to handle them beautifully. Because you're not the scared Omega I bought at that auction anymore, Luella. You're a Luna who runs with her pack, who mediates disputes with wisdom beyond her years, who stood up to her former alpha and won. They'd be fools to underestimate you. The pep talk helped, but Luella still felt butterflies as they loaded into the SUV with Philip and Gail. The regional gathering was held quarterly, bringing together all the alphas from their territory to discuss borders, alliances, and disputes. This would be Luella's first appearance as Luna, and she knew every eye would be on her, especially since word had spread about what happened with Gideon. "Has the council finished their investigation?" Luella asked as Philip drove them toward the neutral meeting grounds. "They released their preliminary findings last week," Teodoro said, his expression darkening. "Clear Water Pack has been placed under formal probation. They found evidence of systematic Omega abuse, financial mismanagement, and falsification of medical records." "Falsification?" Luella's head snapped toward him. "You mean the healers were deliberately misdiagnosing Omegas as Barren to justify selling them? You weren't the first, Luella. You were just the first one who ended up somewhere safe enough to speak out." His jaw tightened. "Gideon's been removed as alpha pending a full tribunal. His beta Brock has been banned from holding any leadership position in any pack." The news should have felt like victory. Instead, Luella felt a deep sadness for all the other Omegas who hadn't been as lucky as she was. "What happens to the pack now?" she asked. "The council's appointed an interim alpha, someone from outside the pack who specializes in rehabilitation. They'll restructure Clearwater's leadership, retrain the healers, and hopefully prevent this from happening again. And the Omegas who were sold, we're trying to track them down. Some have died. Others have disappeared into human society. But the ones we can find were offering sanctuary and support." Teodoro took her hand. "Actually, I was hoping you'd be willing to lead that initiative. They'll need someone who understands what they've been through. Someone who can help them heal." The request made Luella's throat tight. "You want me to help them? I want you to use your experience to prevent others from suffering the way you did. If you're willing." "Of course. I'm willing. When do we start?" "After the gathering." "I didn't want to overwhelm you with too much at once." He squeezed her hand. "But Luella, I'm so proud of you. You've taken everything terrible that happened to you and transformed it into strength. That's what makes you an exceptional Luna." The regional gathering was held in a massive lodge on neutral territory, large enough to accommodate 200 wolves from a dozen different packs. When Luella and Teodoro entered, conversation didn't stop exactly, but it definitely quieted. Every alpha in the room turned to look at her. Luella lifted her chin and met their stares head-on. She was Luna of Shadow Pine. She belonged here, Alpha Wagner. The greeting came from a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and the bearing of someone used to command, and this must be your Luna. "I'm Alpha Annette Matthews of Riverbend Pack. I've heard interesting things about you, young lady." "All terrible, I'm sure," Luella said with a small smile. Annette laughed, a genuine sound that eased some of the tension. "Actually, I heard you stood up to Gideon Martin and made him look like a fool. That alone makes you interesting. The fact that you shifted for the first time at 23 and still managed Luna markings makes you remarkable. You're too kind." "I'm not kind. I'm honest. There's a difference," Annette's sharp eyes assessed her. "You and I should talk later. I have some questions about this Omega Rehabilitation Initiative I hear Shadow Pine is planning." Before Luella could respond, another alpha approached this one male, probably in his 50s, with a scar across his face and cold eyes that reminded her uncomfortably of Gideon. "So this is the famous Barren Omega," he said. "The one who convinced an alpha to mate her despite being worthless. Impressive deception." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Teodoro's hand tightened on Luella's waist, and through the bond, she felt his wolf rising. But she also felt his restraint, his willingness to let her handle this herself. "I'm Luna Luella Martin of Shadow Pine Pack," she said calmly. "And you are?" Alpha Tom Ward of Ironwood. I knew Gideon Martin for 20 years. Good man, good leader. Shame what you did to him. Shame what I did. Luella's voice stayed level despite her anger. I didn't falsify medical records. I didn't abuse Omegas. I didn't sell pack members to pay gambling debts. All I did was survive and tell the truth. If that destroyed Gideon's reputation, perhaps he shouldn't have built it on lies. Tom's expression darkened. Watch your tone, Omega. You might be wearing a Luna's title, but we all know what you really are. She's my mate. Teodoro's voice dropped into that alpha register that made every wolf in the room straighten. She's Luna of Shadow Pine, second only to me in authority. And if you disrespect her again, Alpha Ward, I will challenge you to formal combat, and I will end you. Do you understand me? The threat was unmistakable. Tom palled slightly, but held his ground. This is neutral territory. You can't challenge me here. No, but I can challenge you the moment we leave, and I will unless you apologize to my mate. Now the silence that followed was absolute. Every alpha in the room was watching, judging, waiting to see how this would play out. Tom looked at Luella, his expression resentful, but resigned. My apologies, Luna Martin. I spoke out of turn. It wasn't sincere, but it was an apology. Luella nodded, accepting it graciously, even though she wanted to shift and show him exactly how barren and worthless she was. Apology accepted, she said coolly. Tom walked away quickly, and the tension in the room eased. But Luella noticed several other alphas watching her with new interest, some approving, some calculating. Well handled, Annette said quietly, reappearing at her elbow. Tom's been Gideon's friend for years. He's taking the investigation personally. But you held your ground without losing your temper. That's the mark of a good Luna. I wanted to lose my temper, Luella admitted. We all want to lose our tempers. The trick is not doing it. Annette's smile was knowing. Come, let me introduce you to the alphas who matter, the ones who will judge you on your merit rather than your origin. The gathering itself was a mix of boring bureaucracy and tense negotiations. Territorial disputes were mediated. Alliances were confirmed or dissolved, and grievances were aired in formal settings that felt more like courtroom proceedings than pack business. But through it all, Luella found herself settling into the role of Luna in ways she hadn't expected. She mediated a dispute between two female wolves over territory boundaries, using logic and empathy to find a compromise both could accept. She discussed educational programs with the alphas, who prioritized learning for young wolves. She even found herself advising a newly mated alpha couple on how to integrate the female into a pack that didn't trust outsiders. You're a natural at this, Philip said during a break. Watching you work a room is like watching Teodoro. You have the same instinct for reading people and finding common ground. I'm just doing what feels right. That's what makes you good at it. You're not performing. You're genuinely trying to help. He grinned. The other Lunas are impressed. I overheard 3 of them talking about how refreshing it is to have a Luna who actually listens instead of just posturing. The compliment warmed her, but Luella's attention was pulled away by a commotion near the entrance. The guards were preventing someone from entering, and raised voices suggested an argument was escalating. What's happening? Luella asked. Not sure. Stay here. But Luella was already moving toward the disturbance, Teodoro appearing at her side as they pushed through the crowd. At the entrance stood 3 women, all Omegas by their scent, all thin and frightened and clearly desperate. The guards were trying to turn them away, but one of the women was arguing persistently. Please, we need to speak with Luna Martin of Shadow Pine, the woman was saying. We heard she was helping Omegas, who were sold by Clearwater. We need her help. Please, I'm Luna Martin, Luella said, stepping forward. Let them in. The guards looked uncertain but stepped aside at Teodoro's nod. The 3 women practically collapsed in relief, and Luella guided them to a quiet corner away from the crowd. What are your names? She asked gently. I'm Shelia Stanton, the leader said. This is Pam Barry and Brooke Knox. We were all sold by Clearwater Pack within the last 3 years. We heard about the investigation, about what you said at the hearing. We hoped maybe you could help us. Help you? How? She's eyes filled with tears. We want to go home or at least somewhere safe. The packs we were sold to, they're not good places. We're not mates, we're servants. Property. We thought if we could find you, maybe you'd understand. Luella felt something crack in her chest. These women were her. They were what she would have become if Teodoro hadn't bought her. If she'd ended up with someone like Tom Ward, who saw omegas as commodities rather than people. You're safe now, Luella said firmly. All 3 of you. You're under Shadowpine's protection. Effective immediately, Luna, Philip started to say, probably worried about the political implications of claiming wolves from other packs. They're under our protection, Luella repeated, looking at Teodoro for confirmation. Through the bond, she felt his immediate agreement. They're under our protection, he confirmed. Any alpha who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally, so. The 3 women broke down, crying, not from despair but from relief. And Luella held them while they sobbed, knowing exactly how they felt. That overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful sensation of finally being safe. The incident caused ripples through the gathering. 2 of the women had been sold to Alpha's present at the meeting, and both were furious about losing their property. But when Teodoro offered to reimburse them for their purchase price at current market rates, not the discounted rates they'd paid for, supposedly Barren omegas, both backed down quickly. Money could be replaced, pride could not. By the end of the gathering, Luella had spoken with 7 more omegas who'd been sold by Clearwater or other abusive packs. Not all of them wanted to join Shadowpine. Some just wanted help finding family or legal support to break contracts or medical care to treat injuries from abuse. But they all wanted someone to listen, someone to believe them, someone to care. And Luella listened to every single one. You're going to change werewolf society, Annette told her as the gathering was ending. This Omega Rehabilitation Initiative, it's bigger than you realize. You're challenging centuries of tradition that treats certain wolves as expendable. The conservative alphas are going to hate you for it. Let them hate me. Luella said, as long as I can help even one Omega avoid what I went through, their hatred is worth it. Annette smiled. Spoken like a true Luna. You're going to be a force to be reckoned with, young lady. I look forward to watching you work. The drive home was quiet. Philip drove while Gail dozed in the passenger seat, and Luella rested against Teodoro in the back, exhausted but satisfied. You were amazing today, Teodoro said quietly. The way you handled Tom, the way you claimed those omegas without hesitation, the way you just led. I've never been prouder. I had a good teacher. No, you didn't. You're a natural. You always were. You just needed the opportunity to prove it. He pressed a kiss to her temple. The pack is lucky to have you as Luna. I'm lucky to have them. Lucky to have you. Luella tilted her head to look at him. 6 months ago, I was being sold at an auction. I thought my life was over. And now I'm Luna of a pack I love, made it to someone who sees me as an equal, and helping other wolves find the freedom I found. It doesn't feel real sometimes. It's real, and it's only the beginning. Through the bond, she felt his absolute certainty. You're going to do incredible things, Luella. Things that will change our world for the better. And I'm going to be beside you every step of the way. When they arrived home, the entire pack was waiting not in the great hall, but spread across the lawn in front of the pack house. Guy had clearly organized something, because there were torches lighting the darkness and tables laden with food. What is this? Luella asked as she climbed out of the SUV. A celebration, Joni said, appearing with a warm smile. Word spread about what you did at the gathering, about the omegas you protected, the alphas you stood up to, the alliances you built. The pack wanted to celebrate their Luna properly. Tears stung Luella's eyes as she looked at the assembled wolves. Some she knew well now. Guy with his infectious enthusiasm. Gail with her grudging respect, the kitchen workers who always saved her the best pieces of dessert. Others she was still getting to know, still earning their trust one interaction at a time. But they were all here, all celebrating her. Speech, someone called out. Speech, speech. The chant built until Luella had no choice but to step forward. She looked at Teodoro, who nodded encouragingly. Then she turned to face her pack. 6 months ago, she began, her voice carrying across the lawn. I stood on an auction platform and believed I was worthless, barren, broken, a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. And in some ways, that belief had been reinforced my entire life. I was told I couldn't shift, couldn't breed, I couldn't contribute, that I was a burden rather than a blessing. The crowd was silent, listening. But then Alpha Teodoro bought me. And instead of treating me like property, he treated me like a person. Instead of using me, he protected me. Instead of accepting what I'd been told about myself, he challenged me to discover the truth. And with his support, with the support of this pack, I learned that I was never broken. I was just suppressed, starved of the love and safety and belonging that every wolf needs to thrive. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Today at the regional gathering, I met more wolves like me. Omegas who'd been sold, abused, told they were worthless. And I promised them the same thing Teodoro promised me, that they deserved better, that they were worth fighting for, that they could find a place to belong. Luella looked around at the faces watching her, seeing acceptance and approval and genuine affection. This pack gave me that place. You gave me a home when I had nothing. You accepted me when I had every reason to believe I'd never be accepted. And now, as your Luna, I promise to give that same gift to every wolf who needs it. We're going to be the pack that protects the vulnerable, that challenges injustice, that refuses to accept that any wolf is worthless. The howl started with Guy, high-pitched and enthusiastic and completely genuine. It was picked up by others, spreading through the pack until 60 voices were lifted in approval. In celebration, in acceptance, Luella shifted, without thinking about it, her gray-brown wolf appearing in seconds, and she added her voice to the chorus, howling her joy and gratitude and absolute certainty that she was finally completely perfectly home. When the howling faded, Theodoro's black wolf pressed against her side, and through their bond she felt his love flooding through her. My mate, my Luna, my everything yours, she confirmed. Always yours. Epilogue. 1 year later, Luella stood in the same northern meadow where she'd first shifted, watching a group of young Omegas practice their transformations. Some were from Shadowpine, but most were from other packs' wolves who'd been told they couldn't shift, who'd been labeled defective or broken, who needed someone to believe in them the way Teodoro had believed in her. The Omega Rehabilitation Center was thriving. They'd converted an unused section of the pack house into housing for refugees, and Joni had trained 3 new healers specifically to work with traumatized wolves. Luella spent 3 days a week here teaching and counseling and showing others that transformation was possible. Not just physical transformation. Though watching previously unshiftable Omegas find their wolves never got old, but emotional and psychological transformation. Teaching wolves who'd been treated as property that they deserved dignity. Teaching wolves who'd been called worthless that they had value. Teaching wolves who'd given up hope that better futures were possible. Luna, one of the young Omegas, a girl named Sarah who'd been sold at 14, came running up in human form, breathless with excitement. I felt her, my wolf. She was right there, just beneath the surface. I almost shifted. That's wonderful, Sarah. What stopped you? I got scared. What if I can't shift back? What if I get stuck? Luella smiled, remembering asking Teodoro the exact same questions. You won't get stuck. Your wolf is part of you. She wants to work with you, not against you. Trust her. Trust yourself. But what if? No what ifs. Just trust. Can you do that? Sarah took a deep breath, then nodded. I can try. That's all anyone asks. Just keep trying. As Sarah ran back to rejoin her group, Luella felt Theodoro's presence before she heard him. The bond between them had only grown stronger over the past year, and she could sense him from across the territory now. How are they doing? He asked, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Better every day. Sarah almost shifted this morning. Mason managed a full transformation yesterday and held it for 10 minutes before shifting back. And Lily, the one who was so terrified she wouldn't speak, for the first month she howled with the pack during the full moon run. You're working miracles, here. I'm just showing them what you showed me, that they're worthy of love and protection and belonging. The rest is up to them. Teodoro turned her in his arms, and the look in his amber eyes made her breath catch. I have news. Good news, but also big news. Are you sitting down? I'm standing. What is it? The Regional Council wants to expand the rehabilitation program. They're offering funding to create centers in 3 other territories, all modeled after what we've built here. And they want you to oversee the expansion. It would mean travel, consulting with other packs, training new counselors. But Luella, you'd be affecting hundreds of wolves. Maybe thousands. The opportunity was enormous and terrifying. What about being Luna here? My responsibilities to Shadowpine, we'd adjust. Philip can handle more of the day-to-day operations. I'd travel with you when possible, and the pack would understand. They're proud of what you're doing. They want to share it with the world. Luella looked back at the group of young Omegas practicing their shifts, at the future she was helping them build. Then she looked at Teodoro, at the mate who'd made all of this possible. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Let's change the world. His smile was brilliant. I love you. I love you too. Even though you keep giving me impossible tasks, they're only impossible until you accomplish them. Then they're just impressive. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Oh, and one more thing. There's another reason I wanted to find you this morning. What reason? Joni ran some tests yesterday, the ones you asked for. His hand came to rest on her stomach, and through the bond, she felt his overwhelming joy mixed with nervous anticipation. You're pregnant, Luella. We're going to have a pup. The world tilted. Pregnant, the word that had been used as a weapon against her for so long. The impossibility that had defined her entire life, the dream she'd given up on. Are you sure? She whispered. Joni's sure. 3 different tests, all positive. You're about 6 weeks along. Teodoro's eyes searched hers. How do you feel about that? Luella placed her hand over his, feeling the warmth of his palm against her still flat stomach. Somewhere in there, a tiny life was beginning. A pup who would grow up knowing they were wanted, loved, cherished. A pup who would never doubt their worth or their place in the world. I feel complete, she said through tears. I feel like everything I went through, all the pain and suffering and fear, it was all leading me here, to you, to our pack, to this moment. Teodoro kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. You know what this means, right? He said. What? The clear water healers who declared you barren are going to lose their licenses. There's no recovering from being that wrong about something so fundamental. Luella laughed a bright, joyful sound that scared birds from the nearby trees. Good. Maybe it'll make other healers more careful before they destroy someone's entire life with a false diagnosis. Spoken like a true Luna. Teodoro pulled her close, and she felt his contentment through the bond. We should tell the pack tonight. They'll want to celebrate. Another celebration. Guy is going to run out of cake recipes. Guy will never run out of cake recipes. He's been planning your pregnancy announcement party since the day we made it. He's just been waiting for it to be relevant. They walked back toward the pack house hand in hand, and Luella took a moment to appreciate the journey that had brought her here. From the auction platform, where she'd been sold for $3,000, to the Luna, who was changing werewolf society one omega at a time. From the Barren wolf who couldn't shift to the mother, to be who ran with her pack under the full moon. She'd been called worthless, broken property, but she'd proven them all wrong. She was valued, whole, free, and she was exactly where she was meant to be. Dear viewers, as we reach the end of Luella's journey from souled Omega to powerful Luna, I want to ask you something. If you had been in Luella's position, scared, broken, and offered a chance at something that seemed too good to be true, would you have had the courage to take the leap? Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful transformations. If this story moved you, touched your heart, or reminded you that second chances are real, please hit that like button. Your support means the world. What was your favorite moment from Luella's story? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. Until next time.